Administration Building Boardroom. And in our calling the meeting to order, our first order of business for tonight is A1, the agenda approval. And we're going to ask now that the school board chair is recommending that the school board approve the agenda for the August the 4th meeting. And as that agenda is before us, recognize that we are going to hear each other's opinion, but ultimately act as one as we deliberate. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as you have before you?
I move that we approve the agenda.
Been moved by Dr. Carter. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Morrison. Is there any discussion or questions? Hearing none, we will call for the vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries, and we will now stand for our pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving now to B1, which is a notice of a closed meeting. And the superintendent is recommending to us to approve a motion to convene in closed meeting to discuss the following as permitted by the Virginia Code, Section 2.2-3711A1 for a personnel matter, and Code 2.2-3711A1 appointment or promotion of particular officers, appointees, or employees. Is there a motion for the board to move into closed session?
I so move.
It's been moved by Dr. Brennan, seconded by Ms. Morrison. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries. And now we will go to room 206 for our closed meeting. And we will be right back to the public as quickly as we can. Thank you. motion to come out of closed meeting?
I so move that we convene an open meeting. Second.
All right. Been moved by School Board Member Morrison, second by Dr. Carter, that we come out of closed session. No questions or discussion. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries. And we now need a motion or a process of certifying that all was discussed in the closed session were matters pertaining specifically to the motion to convene and lawfully permitted to be discussed under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act cited in that motion. So we will now start with Bill Evans.
What?
Certificate.
Oh, yes.
To certify.
Sorry, yes.
Yes.
Morrison, Dr. Carter,
Yes.
Dr. Brennan,
Yes.
Dr. Coleman, yes. Dr. Nillis,
Yes.
Dr. Sinha,
Yes.
Yes.
Dr. Gupta, thank you so much, and we are now moving right on and navigating those steps. We now move to C1, which is going to be a special presentation, and we're grateful to the VSBA for their media honor roll opportunity they provide, and I'm going to ask that Vice Chair Brennan will read for us a resolution which will be for action on this evening. Dr. Brennan?
Thank you, Chairman Carter, Dr. Carter, Dr. Holman. This reflects back to 6 months ago when this board discussed the fact of taking recommending that under the VSBA Media Honor Roll, we honor Olivia Joy Johnson, who was the news and advance reporter who died tragically last Christmas. VSBA recognizes that reporters and local media outlets play an important role in public education. School division leaders rely on responsible reporting by local media representatives so that our community members receive timely information about division initiatives and programs. Considering the impact that media coverage can have on community attitudes and beliefs, the Media Honor Roll was created to recognize fair and balanced reporting about our schools and Virginia's public education system. Some of the board members may not have been on the board or may not reflect back on Olivia, but just briefly, Olivia graduated from the University of Minnesota in 2018 with a degree in journalism and an excitement of sharing her gift of writing with the world. She got her first journalism job in Lynchburg, Virginia, where she made new friends in a short time. Olivia was passionate in all she did, and even though her time on this earth was cut short, her passion for family, friends, and those she met has created a lasting impression. In order for the board to submit this request, we need to approve a resolution, which you have before you, but I will read it to you and to the public. So this is the 2020 Virginia School Board Association Media Honor Roll. Whereas in each community, the public schools are shaped by the community to provide the most appropriate and effective education for the school children who attend these schools. And whereas public schools are dependent on the community's support in countless ways, including support in setting goals for the education of our children, in establishing successful volunteer and booster programs at the schools, for annual funding of operations and periodic bond elections, in the election of qualified school board members, and whereas much of the community's knowledge and opinions about the public schools rely on responsible reporting by local media representatives who decide which news to share with the community, how much attention will be focused on various issues, and what the tone of the reporting will be. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Lynchburg City School Board place the name of Olivia Johnson posthumously on the statewide VSBA Media Honor Roll, calling attention to the responsible and exemplary nature of reporting on this community's public schools. We express our appreciation for her balanced and accurate approach to sharing with this community both the challenges facing our schools and the successes achieved by the teachers and students. Her work has aided this community in focusing on the goal of providing the best public schools we can for the children who attend them. So, Mr. Chairman, I would submit that as a...
Thank you, Dr. Brennan. It's now in order for a motion, hopefully a resounding motion, to approve this VSBA Media Honor Roll resolution for Olivia Johnson.
I move to approve the resolution.
Dr. Nilles has moved, it's seconded by Ms. Morrison. Is there any discussion or questions on the motion? Hearing none, we will now call for the vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries. And what an honor for a remarkable person. And thank you, Dr. Brennan, for leading us in that process that we may give honor where honor is due. And we appreciate her and all of those in the media for the service you provide. At this time, we will now, under Section C, Special Presentations, move to C2, which is a return to learn, remote learning opportunity for a presentation. And I do want to remind the board that during this section, it is for information only, and the administrative team will update the school board on those matters that you see on your agenda. There will be no vote at this time. That will come during the G1 discussion and vote. And so at this time, I'm going to ask for Dr. Edwards and her team to lead us in this discussion.
Okay, so, there are lots of questions about our current status with regard to COVID-19 and what we are doing for schools, and particularly the remote learning option. So we would like to the administrative team would like to take about 30 minutes to just share with you a few things, mostly what the remote learning option looks like from the lens of students and families, so that parents and caregivers have a better understanding of what our remote program looks like at a K2 level, at a 3-5, and 6 to 12, as well as share with you very briefly some of our cleaning protocols, response to COVID, and other things that are relevant. But we do realize the very pressing nature to discuss our instructional plans. So with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Pugh and a host of folks who are here who are going to take us through a presentation. So, Ms. Pugh.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board members and Dr. Edwards, thank you for having us here tonight. I'd like to introduce the team of some IT staff as well as some members from the C&I department that have been working with a group of administrators and teachers on developing the return to learn plan and instructional models for our students and families. So I'm Amy Pugh, Director of Information Technology, and from my department, Chuck Yarborough, who's Supervisor of Instructional Technology. And we have 3 supervisors from the Curriculum and Instruction Department, Sarah Campbell, Maria Yeager, and Allison Jordan. And we appreciate your allowing us some time tonight. So specifically in looking at what remote-only instruction is, it is learning that takes place away from an LCS classroom or school, and it includes a variety of activities that are student-centered learning opportunities that might include some online activities and investigations, some hands-on and minds-on learning experiences. So we understand that families are looking for options that allow students to learn at home. And to date, homeschool instruction has been the only option for most of our families. LCS is now able to provide remote learning opportunities for all of our Lynchburg families. And we're able to do that with certified LCS teachers of record. We'll be providing devices for our students in 3rd through 12th grade who have an active enrollment in Lynchburg City Schools. Our teachers and staff would be providing timely and meaningful feedback, which is focused on individual student learning needs. At this time, it's tuition-free for Lynchburg residents. We'll be providing support and road mapping to graduation and beyond for our students and our families. And then families whose students are enrolled in the remote-only instruction will be able to participate in co-op opportunities with other students and parents. Because remote instruction is done exclusively outside of the classroom, it is important to note that parents or guardians will act as partners in their students' learning. They will be providing a balance between helping the students explore and engage in the learning process and then allowing students to show mastery on their own. And Allison Jordan is going to take us through the next part.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
LCS teachers will deliver this remote instruction. That's very important. So all of our students and our families will have relationships with teachers in LCS. The instruction will be delivered via Google Classroom and a platform called Seesaw. Seesaw will be used for the younger grades and will be able to push out materials for the students, but also for the parents and the guardians. The learning opportunities that we are preparing will be student-centered and based on the needs of our individual LCS students and families. There's some vocabulary that we're all going to have to get really, really good at, and some of them are complicated. So the words asynchronous, meaning not time-bound, and that's a flipped opportunity. Parents and students will be able to engage in this instruction on the weekends, at nights, at their own pace. And then the opposite of that is synchronous, so that's time-bound. So we're gonna have a mixture of the two types of learning to where the families can engage at their own pace, but also when they're sure to be able to see the teacher and have a relationship with an LCS staff member. I love this slide. Will my child be able to interact with the teacher? Absolutely. That's what we're here for. So we're going to do this in a variety of ways. Zoom, we're all getting really, really good at Zoom. So we're going to offer some things like read alouds, small groups, maybe even morning meetings, individual check-ins, reteaching, support, office hours, even for parents. If you're like, I don't know how to do this, then we'll have opportunities for you to be able to check in with LCS staff members as well. We'll do some of this traditional communication with parents and families through Google Classroom messaging and the app Seesaw. We'll call people, we'll have office hours, and we're even discussing prearranged tutoring sessions. So we promise that we will be there in a variety of ways, some of which are traditional that you're already used to.
What will the LCS Learning Day look like? Learning will be flexible and fluid. Families will have the opportunity to create their own schedule based on instructional materials and resources provided by the teacher through Google Classroom and or Seesaw. Families of our pre-K through second grade students will be able to access and engage in learning through Seesaw. This online learning and management system, it will be accessible through phone, tablet, Chromebook, laptop. And in addition, students in grades 3rd through 12th will be able to access instructional materials posted by the teacher through Google Classroom. The Learning Day will provide various opportunities for teachers and school staff to connect with students in an environment that is synchronous when appropriate. For example, if a student has a question about an assignment, the student can send a message to their teacher, and then the teacher can schedule a Zoom meeting and provide clarifications and provide additional support as needed. Now let's take a look at the VDOE's recommendations for maximum learning times for remote learning. The recommendations in the table are for student learning times by grade level. It is important to note that the self-selected reading time should be in addition to this and is encouraged daily at all levels. Learning times will vary from student to student as students learn at different rates. Families may also have unique circumstances. Teachers will scale and adjust instruction based on an individual needs. Flexibility will be key for both teachers, students, and families as everyone is adjusting and many have multiple roles at home.
Good evening. So in summary, when you think about remote learning, it provides a flexible way to schedule learning for the student. So for grades pre-K through 2, the parent and guardian students access the instructional materials which are created by teachers and the resources and the learning activities through Seesaw. And this is sort of like a summary of what has already been shared with you through Seesaw. And students complete and submit all assignments remotely via Seesaw. Parents, guardians can schedule teacher-student contact time to review assignments, ask questions, or discuss student progress. For grades 3 through 12, we have a different system, which we use Google Classroom. And again, you can access all instructional materials that are created by teachers, resources, and learning activities. And these, just like the ones in Seesaw, will be available every Monday of each week. Students will complete and submit all assignments remotely via Google Classroom. And again, students, parents, and guardians can schedule teacher contact time to review assignments, ask questions, and stay in contact with the teacher.
Sounds good so far, right? Then you're thinking, we got to figure out a way to do this. Well, I get the best part. I have the best job here because we have all the stuff. So we are providing every student from grade 3 through 12 with a device, which is no small task. And I was really glad to hear we were going to be able to pull that off. We are not providing devices for pre-K through 2, but we're really trying to stay away from the idea that the technology is the primary driver of education at that. So it is much more of a conduit for the parent to see what's being asked for them to do and to be that partner. So most of the tools that we're building, we're specifically looking for things that are device agnostic, something that I guess shows itself equally well on a phone, a tablet. We know for a lot of our younger kids, that's how a lot of their content, if they're looking at things, comes through. You've heard a lot about Seesaw. The main reason we went with Seesaw over Google Classroom for younger kids, it is a much friendlier platform. All of the tools that you need to present or to do work in Seesaw actually stay within the program itself, whereas Classroom uses a lot of other things. We've been really aggressive about trying to get Wi-Fi out in more places. We now have external Wi-Fi. You wouldn't know it if somebody didn't tell you what it is, but there are these little small devices hanging on the sides of the building that shine Wi-Fi out into the parking lot. So we've got them on 19 buildings, 6 rec centers. We're still looking at some other options to give kids a place so they have some other access if they don't have access at home.
We locked Janine out.
Good evening, everyone. As far as special education students and English learners are concerned, the services are going to be, they will be receiving services and follow the same return to learn format as their peers. IEP teams and the EL teams will meet with students to address the individual needs on a case-by-case basis. IEP teams are in charge of where the needs will be. And we've asked that parents contact their child's administrator to set up these meetings to discuss any concerns and needs that they have.
All my other colleagues are doing a really good job breathing and talking. I get so so forgive me. We wanted to show you that we have a continuum of services planned. So we're focusing on the remote-only instruction in a lot of ways tonight. So we have a plan for the remote-only instruction to work on a continuum with the hybrid model when we get to the cohorts of students coming in and out of the building. And ultimately, our goal is in-building instruction. So all 3 of these will work together as needed. So if we have to go back a phase, this instruction will be aligned in time and in pace. So we wanted to show you that even though we're focusing a lot on remote only, we have a plan for the other two.
And to assist families in selecting options, and we'll post this on our website along with the information on the next slide, here are some steps of how you could log into your Infinite Campus Parent Portal. In the Message Center, you would select surveys. You can complete one survey then, please, for each household, and when you're done, you click on Close Survey. That will let us know which of the instructional models you would like to select, and again, we will post this information on our website. Along with this, so if you still need help, have questions, please contact your child's school Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. You may also contact the LCS Help Desk at the phone number listed there. Again, Monday through Friday between 8 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. And if you're not able to connect with someone, please leave a message with a good time to call you back, and one of the school staff or someone from our LCS Help Desk will return your call. And we are here for you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Steve Gatsky, if you don't remember, Director of Facilities. So we're in the process right now of training our staff on cleaning procedures and disinfecting the schools, classrooms, and buses for, obviously, COVID-19. Back at the in June or whatever, when we started working on the return to learn, or the getting permission to resume activities in our school buildings, we had to submit a health and safety plan to the state, and as part of that, we came up with an LCS cleaning plan, which was submitted to the state. But that plan is simply how to clean, and it's based on CDC recommendations, guidelines, along with VDH. We had a training session with the administrators last week, and in that, we went through the plan and gave them an idea of what will be going on in their classrooms and restrooms and everywhere else. And also, we really hit very strongly on what to do if somebody in their classroom becomes ill, and what the process is, and whatever. So we spent about 40 minutes with the administrators, and we'll be doing the same thing. We've already met with the head custodians and gone over the plan, but we're going to have a little more in-depth sessions coming up in the next week or so. One of the things that everybody's been interested in is the electrostatic sprayers that we purchased, and we have gotten them. I think it's 2 for each elementary, 3 for the secondaries, and then 1 for the smaller auxiliary sites. And this is what it looks like. This model is a Victory electrostatic sprayer, and very simply, once the custodian or whoever staff member, anybody can use it, but once the custodian is done cleaning the classroom, disinfecting does not replace cleaning, okay? And that's a point we're trying to stress with all the staff, that disinfecting does not replace cleaning. You clean first, and then you disinfect. But once an area is clean, then they can take this piece of equipment, and it has a disinfectant in it that is perfectly safe to use on food prep surfaces and everything like that. You don't need any special PPE or anything like that. And you just spray the solid surfaces throughout the whole room. So I've cleaned this room. I would start in the back corner and work my way to the door, but I would just.
Ooh.
So I'm just going through and just, and I let it dry. You just let it dry on its own. Disinfectants work better if they have a dwell time. So, as I said, the last thing they do, they hit all the surfaces, the desks, the chairs, and walk their way, and make their way out the room, and then they turn out the lights and they leave, and they let it dry on its own. And that is, like I said, it's an EPA-approved disinfectant. It is perfectly safe to use. It's, like I said, it's even rated for food prep. The other thing we've been doing is we've developed our own little set of videos we have one on classroom cleaning, we have one on restroom cleaning, we will have one on how to use the electrostatic sprayer, we have one on basically for the custodians on the continuous cleaning or disinfecting that we expect to have done during the day, all the hot touch points and things like that. And we're also doing one right now for the teachers on the continuous disinfection process during the day while they're in the classrooms. That one we hadn't developed yet. But I would like to show you this one. First of all, these videos were put together by Shirley Rucker, our field coordinator for environmental services, and Ruth McGee, who you see in the video there. Ruth is custodian at Sheffield Elementary. She's also very talented in video production, and she does the narration on this, and basically did all the mechanics of putting this video together. So, oh. It's about a little over 3 minutes.
Whoops. Let's go back.
In this video, we will learn the after-school cleaning that will need to take place in a classroom. Every day, you will need to empty the pencil sharpener and trash cans, clean all commonly touched surfaces, dust mop the floor, vacuum rugs, clean the door window, disinfect light switches, door handles, and phone, spot mop, and use the mist machine to disinfect clean surfaces. If your classroom has a bathroom in it, clean it every day by following the instructions in the bathroom cleaning video. Once a week, you will need to dust, clean the walls and windows, mop the entire floor, and check the lights to make sure there are no bugs or burned out bulbs. To do this work, you will need a duster, a dust mop, rags, cleaner, disinfectant spray, a vacuum, glass cleaner and paper towels, disinfectant wipes, a wet mop, and a mist machine. Every day, all trash cans need to be emptied. There's a pencil sharpener in the room, empty that too. Every classroom will need to be dusted once a week. On the day you are dusting, it should be one of the first things you do as you begin to clean a classroom, so you won't rain dust down on already clean surfaces. When you dust, make sure you get the vents. While you're dusting is a good time to check the lights for bugs and burned out bulbs. Every day, whether or not you dust, you will need to clean all surfaces that are commonly touched. Halt is good for this job. Spray it on the surfaces, but wait a few minutes before wiping it off. Now get your dust mop. Since it's best for the cleaner to sit for a few minutes, this is a good time to do your dust mopping. Once you're done dust mopping, it will be time to wipe down the surfaces you sprayed with cleaner earlier. A rag folded in half twice does the job well. After using one side, you can flip it and use the other, and continue to do this until every side has been used, at which point you can rinse it out if needed. However you use the rag, wipe desks, counters, windowsills, and any other surface that is commonly touched. If there are rugs in your classroom, they need to be vacuumed every day. Once again, every day, clean the door window with glass cleaner and paper towels, and once a week, clean the other windows. Once a week, you will need to clean the walls as well. Now use disinfectant wipes to disinfect the light switches, door handles, and phone. Once everything else is done, you can mop any visibly dirty areas on the floor. Once a week, you will need to mop the entire floor. After all your classrooms are cleaned and the floors are dried after mopping, use the mist machine on the desks, chairs, and other commonly touched things in the room. This video has shown you what is included in cleaning a classroom on a daily and weekly basis. The order in which many of these tasks are done is up to personal preference. Even the specific techniques for cleaning can be changed as needed, and tools and cleaners can be substituted for availability reasons. But no matter how you go about cleaning the classroom, find a routine that works for you, and most importantly, leaves the room clean and safe for our students.
So, like I said, we have one of these for restroom cleaning and using the mister, and we're developing a couple more. And I have told Shirley and Ruth that they need to put their names on that. They need to take credit for it. So, any questions or anything?
Has the team finished, Dr.
No,
Okay.
I think there's a couple more. We'll get questions at the end, so.
Yeah, we'll do the questions at the end, and people may have to come back in.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Angel Garcia Blanque, Director of Transportation. As a follow-up to what Steve just showed, we have also developed a plan for the buses. After each run, when we deliver the kids, the drivers will clean the high-touch surfaces, and we have 4 of those machines that will be used to disinfect the buses between runs. And on the days that we are not transporting kids, which is a Monday on our plan, we will do a deep cleaning of those buses, meaning that they will be thoroughly washed and then disinfected. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Board.
Good afternoon.
Training and resources were provided to administrators to assist them with developing their own unique social emotional plan for their schools. Emphasis was placed on LCS as a family, a community of individuals working together to achieve one mission. Every child by name, by need, to graduation and beyond. All LCS students will receive social and emotional learning and well-being resources daily. A daily social-emotional learning plan inclusive of curriculum and activities is being developed by each school to engage and ensure all students are prepared for the future academically, socially, and emotionally. The good news is our schools were already providing social-emotional learning daily, teachings and interactions with our students. It is our goal to continue to build an even stronger social-emotional learning relationships that leads to positive goals, outcomes, and relationships for our students. For elementary students, we will continue to use the social-emotional curriculum with second steps. That will be used for our K-5 students. We started the program last year, and we will continue this year. This year, we will add in our pre-assessment, a mid-year assessment, and an end of year, and it will also have a feature built in at the beginning of the year where the parents can give input in regards to the social and emotional well-being of their child. For secondary, we will use the Y-Try program. This is our second year with implementing the Y-Try program. Additionally, local mental health resources were provided to administrators, social workers, and counselors. Our resources are located on the LCS website, and internally, we have a Google Drive for the counselors and administrators that give social and emotional curriculum, resources, activities, and all of the local vendors and the agencies that we work with. In addition, working with our McKinney-Vento coordinator, there are additional resources for housing, for food, for electricity, and other needs that our students might have. I'm going to change gears now and ask Ann Von Gentry, my supervisor for student services, and Andrea Bryant, the nurse coordinator for the division, to come up. Okay. In regards to COVID-19 staff training, we conducted 2 sessions, so we're going to give you a blended presentation. The nurse coordinator, Ms. Bryant, presented 1 session, and Sarah Birch, who is our interim director our interim human resource director assisted me in providing another staff training to our staff. Please note that all staff will receive COVID-19 awareness training and complete a Google form at the end. If they have any questions, they can reach out to the nurse coordinator or complete the form and put their questions in that document, and we will answer those accordingly. As of right now, out of the roughly 1,700 staff, we ask administrators to have it completed by the 6th. We are well surpassed that. We have, as of right now, 400 responses. And so school just started today with staff coming back. So we are on our way to having our staff trained quickly on the awareness of COVID. Okay. We have protocols in place related to a staff person and/or a student who tests positive or are directly exposed to someone who tests positive for COVID-19. That involves the notification of the nurse coordinator and interim human resource director. In addition, LCS has a collaborative 24-hour, 7 days a week relationship with the Lynchburg Health Department, who would advise the school division on actions to be taken. All decisions to close an office, classroom, or school will be finalized in tandem with the superintendent. Should a staff or student test positive for COVID-19, the nurse coordinator will utilize a decision tree to make a recommendation to the interim human resource director and the superintendent upon advisement from the health department. The interim human resource director will then follow protocols that are in place for the employee and/or employer. Please note that LCS will follow the same protocols for an employee who may be asymptomatic and/or symptomatic. The nurse coordinator will then work with the Lynchburg Health Department to determine the next steps for the employee, whether it's medically, a recommendation for days quarantine if needed, or for contact tracing. Then the nurse coordinator will collaborate with the interim human resource director and intake committee to determine if the leave is needed, the length of time, and if applicable, the types of leave. The employees will be provided this document tomorrow. All of the administrators were trained on the flow chart during our sessions. Next slide. With the flow charts, they will also receive a pocket screener, and they are being laminated, and those were things that I passed out while y'all were out on break. This is a self-screening tool that each staff, notice I said each staff, whether it's a bus driver, a classified employee, will be able to use to self-monitor if they are having some symptoms or questions. And if they have any questions at any time, they can talk to the nurse at their school or contact the nurse coordinator directly. This is our prevention and intervention, one of our methods to help keep everyone safe, but also helping them become aware of their daily temperature and also for them to self-regulate their health accordingly. Okay. The nurse will follow the CDC recommendations for assessments. The nurse coordinator will be training all nurses this week. In regards to the nurse assessment, the nurse coordinator has a checklist. She went over that assessment in detail with the administrators so that they would know her direct process when phone calls come in, things that she will be looking for, things in which she would say a student or a staff person may need to go into isolation, and also screening. Prior to anyone entering the building, what does the checks look like when we're having them checked for temperature at the door, when we're asking our questions for screening upon entry? All of those things were gone over by the nurse coordinator in detail. Positive cases within the schools or departments, especially offices, classrooms, or in any of the buildings, okay? Anytime that we have a positive case, we will follow up with contact tracing in collaboration with the Virginia Department of Health so that the division can determine the best course of action in accordance to the CDC guidelines. Each case will be treated as an individual case because we may not know the unique circumstances. So as each instance come in, the nurse coordinator will put into motion a plan and work very quickly to do the contact tracing and have her teams move immediately and relay information to the superintendent so we can respond appropriately and quickly. Any questions?
I have questions, but I'll ask later.
The team,
Is that the end of?
That's it. That's it.
Okay, okay. Yes, and now we can take questions.
all right, thank you, first of all, Dr. Edwards, and to the entire team for your presenting. It reflects a great amount of thought, and I hope our public can appreciate it. We would like to allow a few minutes now for the board to ask questions. Some of the staff members might be the ones that would answer those questions. We designed it this way so that they could do what they need to do and then not be held as we continue throughout the meeting. And so anyone who has a question, Dr. Gupta.
So my questions are basically on the last slide in terms of testing. Are we going with any baseline data of who has COVID? Because many of these people may be asymptomatic coming to our schools. So we are not collecting any baseline data. No random testing of COVID-19 as they come into the school, unless they show the symptoms.
Right now, in working with the health department, they have not recommended that we do random testing of any type. We have asked all of our employees to self-check themselves, and we are doing a screening as they come into the school building. We also are keeping some data if we need to, so we can begin looking at data and tracking among ourselves if we need to.
And my second question is, so if I need test, will the LCS cover the cost? Is there a provision through CARES Act or other monies to pay for that costing if the parents are not able to afford a COVID-19 test?
We've been working with several agencies in the community to determine who has testing available, and so we're continuing to do that to figure out if we can make that available to them, yes.
Dr. Carter?
First, I want to just say thank you all for just the information that you're presenting. And I know that everyone in central office and building principals and administration assistants have been working harder these 6 months or 5 months since March than probably you've ever had before. And it continues to be a moving target, but you're doing good with keeping up. My question is push out. I heard that for pre-K to second grade. What's a push out and how would it be pushed out?
It means that, go ahead, finish.
And the other thing is, I didn't see where they would have devices. So what devices would they be using?
Both very good questions, and I will follow up on that. So in pushing out, we're indicating that we are pushing the content out to our students via 2 different platforms. So in 3rd through 6th grade, teachers and students have access to Google Classroom, which is an online platform. It's a learning management system. So teachers will log in and they will, for their unit plan, their lesson plans, they will have devised that a variety of different opportunities for learning and engagement. Some of them might be online, using the technology, using a computer, watching a short video, but it's a progression of learning activities that students can go through to learn the skills. They will tell the students at the beginning of the unit what the expectations are in I-CAN statements. So they're taking the SOLs that they're covering in instruction and then turning those into student-friendly language so the students are understanding what it is that they're going to be learning over a given period of time. So instructional materials and resources will be available to the students in 3rd through 12th grade through Google Classroom, and they will have those devices that they can access that. So they may be asked to watch a short video that a teacher has recorded and then follow up in some sort of a short project, an assessment, and turn that information in via Google Classroom. Pre-K through 2, the platform that we're using is user-friendly for those students, and it's called Seesaw. We are going to make that learning material available through Seesaw and ask that parents, because most of our kindergarten students on day 1 aren't reading at that point in time, so to look at the information and to see what the student needs to do, the parent would log into that online platform and go through the activities for the week. So the activities for the week will be posted in that platform. There will be some must-dos, some can-dos, some follow-up, and know that we are grading learning for all of our students. So it's very different than our spring choice boards. But the differences in pre-K through 2, that the parents, as we indicated, will need to be, in all cases, a partner in their students' learning, but more so in pre-K through 2, where they will need to access the information, the learning resources, and it's, again, via a cell phone, an iPad, a tablet, a computer, a Chromebook, and then help their students with that learning using the recommended time from the VDOE guidelines.
All right, I'm going to, Belle, go right ahead.
I have a follow-up to that. I'm just a little worried about the K2. If you have a family that is unable to share a device to use or unable to come up with the materials online from this program, is there any, I know in the spring we did packets for people. Is there any talk of having material available?
Absolutely. We will make that available. We will also do our best to work with those families of our pre-K through 2nd grade students who don't have access to a device and try to figure out who those families are in need and if we in any way possibly can provide them with a device.
Okay. So they could get in touch with us, let us know that they need help.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm going to get back over Dr. Carter, but I want Dr. Sinha, Susan, and then we'll go back to Dr. Carter.
Well, that related to something I was going to ask. I know for our preschooler, we end up printing a lot of stuff for her to do, to color things. Like right now we're studying skeletons of sea otters. You know, I mean, there's an abundance of material, but we do an awful lot of printing, which paper isn't that much, but boy, the ink cartridges are. And not a lot of people have printers. My older daughter's always saying, can I come over and print something? Right. So the question is, will there be every Monday, I guess, a way to distribute the printed materials or whatever supplies are available?
Yes.
Even the higher grades too.
Yeah, and then I have
absolutely, and we will have to be and will be in contact with our students and our parents and our families to monitor their progress, to check in on how they're doing, not just academically, but also socially and emotionally. And we will continue to work with them on providing them the resources, whether it's support on a homework hotline or whether it's we need to have a place where you can pick up the paper resources that you need to support your learning. And know that we are developmentally appropriately focusing classroom instruction or the remote instruction in PK through 2 on a lot of play and exploration and hands-on versus screen time, which is not appropriate at that level.
Ms. Morrison, and then
it's okay. Well, I just had a related question.
Okay, go ahead, please, go ahead, Dr. Simmons.
It's just a simple question, but I'm having a hard time wrapping my brain around because I went to school in the 70s, which was ancient times. How does a person do long division, for example, on a tablet? Is it still a paper and pencil process that they're copying?
Absolutely, and the teacher would model that, so the teacher would model the lesson and record themselves doing that lesson and push that out. Either they're able to listen to it or watch that or put it out step by step, but they're going to model that process and that instruction for those students, and then the students would still do that on paper, not on a device.
And then would they, for example, photograph that sheet to turn it in, or how does that work?
They can submit their responses either on paper, or they could take a photograph and submit that. can, in Seesaw, students can record themselves and upload in lots of different means and modes, as well as Google Classroom. So there's a lot of flexibility in how students are showing their learning.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Morrison?
My question is, to me, the most important piece of this is the teacher contact with the students and the parents. And my question is, if they download on Monday, or they are presented this menu on Monday, what's the teacher's responsibility for those pre-K through 2s? How are we, what impact are they going to have with the students in terms of their learning?
The teacher would not be pushing out content on Monday and then done for the remainder of the week. The teacher will have a schedule of perhaps small group check-ins with students, phone calls with students, office hours with students, reading a book out loud to groups of students, having the opportunity for one-on-one conversations or a small group or as many in a classroom as you can. So the teacher's day will be busy with continually preparing instruction for the next week and weeks out, but also with making sure they are contacting students on a daily basis throughout the week and connecting with them in some way.
I knew that. I just wanted to make
Yes.
sure that
Absolutely.
watching us understood that we just
Yes,
weren't gonna
ma'am.
push out Seesaw.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It is not we're going to push it out and we're done and it's up to the parents. Absolutely not. There will be meaningful engagement between the teachers and the students, as well as meaningful and timely feedback for the students and the parents on student instruction and learning.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Carter?
My question, is Seesaw similar to the IXL Lynchburg? Is it set up similarly? Because
No,
I know.
ma'am. No, ma'am. IXL is a math and reading software application where our students can take diagnostic assessments, and then based on the results of those assessments are assigned skills to practice and work on to make progress. Seesaw is a learning management system that's appropriate for younger students. So if you are familiar with Blackboard, or Canvas is a learning management system, Google Classroom is a learning management system. A learning management system is a way for teachers to push out resources, learning materials, learning opportunities to students, and then the students can engage in that learning in that platform. So Seesaw is another learning management system, but it's age appropriate for younger students.
Okay, and then, so now if I'm a older or just a parent, how easy is it for me to navigate to help to show my child how to?
I am glad that you asked that, and we are working on video resources for our families on both Google Classroom and Seesaw, both from a student perspective and a parent, a guardian perspective, and we will have those out in a very short time.
And will all of these work on like a phone?
Yes, ma'am.
Android or iPhone?
Yes, ma'am. They are device agnostic.
Okay, that's what you said.
Is there any board member that hasn't spoken? Dr. Nilles?
We'll start with an easy one first. We're sending out a lot more devices. What insurance have we taken out on these?
We have extended warranty on these devices. In our purchase, we've purchased the extended warranty.
In terms of like damage from handling?
This includes damage from handling, not just the manufacturer's, internal operating warranty.
Child drops it and the screen cracks?
Yes, and we also, which we've had in place for our LCS 1 for the past 5 or 6 years, we have the accidental damage protection that we would also offer to these families. So
I was going to say, we need to make sure it's clear what their liability is.
Yes.
For the device, under what circumstances.
Yes.
The K-12, K-2 push-out seems really problematic to me from the implied need to have internet access. And I know that's not the case for all the students and families, and I'm not seeing that we really have a good way to engage, not just weekly, but 2 to 3 times a week with those families. you know, I don't see how a teacher is going to having schedule office hours for someone that can't get their Wi-Fi connected up or has limited access, or families. Anyway, just a general comment. But related to that, on the IEP meetings, how are those going to be scheduled, and where are they going to be?
IEP meetings are currently being done through Zoom. They're done virtually. We're not having them in person at this point, but the case manager schedules that with the parent and all the staff, and then they meet in on Zoom.
And that's working okay at this point?
It's working okay. As long, we have had some glitches every once in a while with internet access going in and out, but there's always a phone number, and parents have been able to call in on that.
Okay, and I have one more question. I guess when you're talking at the beginning, there was a comment made about assessing individual needs, and how are we going to do that with every student and with sort of the remote access? And you don't have the daily classroom interaction where you can see something, or what I mean, even particularly with the K through 2.
Absolutely. IXL, which is an online platform, is one of our ways of assessing individual student needs with diagnostic assessment there. We've also talked a little bit about in our presentation about the need perhaps to have individual students come in to receive some diagnostics so that we can better help them and understand where they are and what those learning gaps are. So we plan to have that available as well, but that would be on an individual basis. If they're in a remote option, they could schedule a time to come in and have that diagnostic or go through that assessment piece, and we would use that as one way.
Anyone else would like to, Dr. Gupta?
So following up on Dr. Nellis's question, assuming breakages will happen, device failures will happen, so I'm assuming we have sufficient inventory as backup.
Yes, sir.
If somebody needs a replacement,
Yes, sir.
we'll be able to replace that unit for them.
We do. We do. And our typical, what we have done in the past and will continue to do, is that device is swapped out immediately so that that student is not without a device waiting for that to be repaired. So we have those in inventory spares in our schools, and we would be able to swap those out. We have them at our ITC center as well. But we would swap that out so that they're not waiting for the device to be repaired.
My second question was just out of curiosity. Earlier, I was told that we'll be using Canvas as an LMS. Now you move to Google Class. Is there a technological reason, or?
Two reasons. I think there's a capacity reason. Our teachers have been using Google Classroom, especially in 6th through 12th, and in some cases already in third, fourth, and fifth grade. So our teachers and our students are familiar with Google Classroom. Canvas would be a new platform for our students and staff. And so keeping our students and staff in the capacity for new learning and training and professional development, and the need to be socially distant. Our face-to-face professional development and learning is very different this year, so we decided to hold off on implementing Canvas as an LMS.
But functionality will not be
No, sir.
changed?
No.
Okay, we're going to hear from Dr. Brennan now.
I didn't have a question, but just a comment. I just want to thank the entire staff. This is obviously a hugely complicated project that you all have put a lot of time and effort, and we really appreciate it. And I'm sure that with like everything else that's going on with this challenge, that you all will be flexible and start with a model and adapt as you need to go along. But thank you all very much for that presentation of what you've done.
Dr. Carter and then Dr. Sinha.
Is there any way we can get to look at Seesaw at some point, just to see how friendly it is? Okay.
Dr. Sinha?
I'm really impressed with the cleaning protocols and those misters with the spotlight. But so I think you've done a thorough job of that. But the more we learn about this virus, it seems that the initial concerns that we had about it being transmitted on surfaces and touching, sort of like MRSA, where you really do have to do radical cleaning if there's an infection, seems to be less of a concern, and it's really an airborne thing in the moment, not kind of latent whatever. So what do we know, or what mitigating factors are we able to do in our classrooms, particularly those that don't have windows or things in that regard?
So one of the things that we talked about is wearing the mask. And we have started a draft of a face covering, I should say, get my terminology correct, a face covering policy or protocol for students. When we did the administrator training last week, we did 2 days. So in a sense, we gave them a flipped classroom, and then we did sort of a AA day for them on Wednesday and Thursday. And they wore their masks for the duration of the day. School started at 8 and ended at 3. And we had lunch, so they got to feel what it would feel like to be a student. And inherent in our practice are, we have to put in mask breaks or face covering breaks and comfort breaks and take the opportunity. It's nice outside, we could go outside and spread out. When kids are sitting at their desk and there's no movement, you have a little bit more flexibility to kind of, but when we have the movement around, we have to practice keeping the face coverings on, as well as last week and today we had sanitizing stations outside the rooms. You hand sanitize before you come in the room. So one of the things we want to make sure kids do are wash their hands before they get busy, so that we do, if there's any way to mitigate the spread, we've done everything we possibly can in our classrooms and in our office spaces.
Just one more thing.
Right here, Dr. Sinha.
I've heard the flipped classroom mentioned a couple times, and people may not know what that is. Can you just give us a quick definition of that, what that means?
I love that one, yes.
Very common in college.
Flipped is when you take a piece of content and you record it in such a way that kids can access it in different ways. And so one of the things that flipped videos do, we've all been in that class where the teacher's giving 5 minutes of instruction and you zone out for a second, right? Somebody walks by, the pretty girl, something happens, and you're like, oh, and I lost it. What you can do is you can take a flip video, and the example I love to give was an art teacher at Glass did this, Linda Harding, if you know who Linda Harding was. She had to teach cross-hatching, which is the shading, right? She hated it. She says, I understand it's art, least favorite thing to do. So we talked about it. This was when I was the ITRT here. So she flipped that video. She made a 4-minute video of everything they needed to know about cross-hatching to get started, and it was the homework. So kids would watch that at night. And the assignment was, watch the video, come in, ready to go, we'll have supplies out. She never taught it again. But the beauty of that is some kids would watch and go, I didn't get that. You just watch it again. Bring your Chromebook to class, watch it 8 times if you need to. Maybe there was one part you got thrown on. Some kids come into class, they're ready to go. Those kids, we've already differentiated. You've started your stuff and you've started doing your cross-hatching. Some kids didn't really do it. Okay, well, she doesn't have to teach the whole class again, right? Watch your little video. So flipping allows you to take the content and put it into a situation where kids have, I guess, more control over the access. Some kids want to hear it, so you stick your headphones in, you watch the video that way, right? She spent that 10 minutes every time she did that lesson doing other stuff, working with other kids in other ways like that. So that's what flipped learning does.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I certainly want to thank Dr. Edwards and the staff as we are dealing with this 132 school divisions going through the same thing. Many of our board members are observing what's going on in other places. You all have presented to us a overview that helps us to appreciate that we're considering everything. We know that there are gaps that already exist, and this COVID-19 dynamic may exacerbate some of those challenges and inequities, and it seems like you're thinking about all of that, even how we'll engage parents who may have some difficulties with their younger kids or even the older kids. And so I just want to thank each of you all for your professionalism and expertise and informing the board. Is there any other board member that has a question for a staff member? Because we would like to move on.
One last.
Dr. Gupta?
So I just want assurance from Dr. Edwards, all the staff, especially like custodial staff, will be provided gloves and masks. Is custodial staff required to have gloves as they clean, or?
We do have gloves for our custodial staff. Some people have their own mask. I mean, many of us have purchased our own masks. We have our face coverings, I should say, available to staff as well. So it's a combination of, yes, we have some for distribution. If you have your own and it fits nicely, snugly, you may also wear that and wear your own PPE as well.
All right, well, thank you, Team LCS, and we're going to move on. Thank you very much, each of you. This moves us now to item D, public comments. And I do want to inform the board that the vice chair and I will be seeking to have further conversation with you all about how we want to handle public comments going forward, recognizing with COVID-19 that it would only be appropriate to continue to allow emails to be read and phone calls for those who would prefer that option, as well as recognizing the 15-minute sign-in dynamic. And we're allowing 30 minutes for this section. And so having said those, in accordance with policy BDDHZ for public participation in school board meetings, school board welcomes requests and comments. We always have and always will. And of course, there are guidelines stipulated within that policy. We do want to inform the public going forward that you will need to have your submissions in advance to the superintendent no later than 12 noon of the Wednesday preceding the regular board meeting, or by signing the public comment form, which will be available to the public 15 minutes before the meeting starts. And so we will...
Isn't it 2 hours before the meeting?
No, ma'am. According to BDDHZ, we have a 15-minute requirement within the context of that policy.
The 2 hours was what we were doing when we were having our Zoom meetings.
Oh, okay.
So, again, remind everyone operating from BDDHZ. And so tonight, having said all of that, due to limited seating, members of the public are encouraged to sign in advance. And what we're going to do tonight is begin with those who are physically present. And we have 4 persons who have signed in tonight to share with us. And I will read this statement that I'm required to read. Persons appearing before the school board will not be allowed to campaign for public office or promote private business ventures, and should not use profanity or vulgar language or gestures, make comments about a public official or an employee that are not related to his or her official duties, engage in behavior that disrupts the meeting or intimidates others, or address the school board on issues that do not concern the services, policies, role, and other responsibilities of the school board. Individual speakers shall limit their comments to 3 minutes. A speaker representing a group shall limit his or her comments to 5 minutes, and the representative shall identify the group at the beginning of his or her presentation. A group may have no more than 1 spokesperson, and the total allotted time for public comments for this meeting is 30 minutes, and we, of course, reserve that right to make adjustments where necessary. So at this time, we will hear from Kathleen Kennedy, who is coming as an individual.
And I'm going to ask, because the presentation laptop is connected here, and due to social distancing, I'm not going to use a timer that's projected. I'm just going to call time, if that's okay.
Amy, thank you for that, because I was going to ask the superintendent or you to help us with that, to make sure we stay within the 3 minutes or 5 minutes, and that when we get to 30 minutes, unfortunately, we will have to cut this segment off. All right? Thank you so much.
So Dr. Coleman,
Yes.
if you could keep track of the 30 minutes also? Or,
Yes, that's what I'm, who's going to, Dr. Edwards will keep hold of the 30 minutes, and Amy will keep us on track with the 3 to 5 minutes for either the public statements or the readings that we may have.
Thank you.
All right, Kathleen? All right, next person is Sandra Travis.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Sandra Travis. I haven't been in a speech class in 40 years. I feel the same way. Anyway, I'm a city resident, a taxpayer, and I have adult children, so I don't have children in LCS currently. 3 or 4 of my children graduated from Heritage High School. I do have elementary age grandchildren, I also have a lot of friends who have children in LCS. I'm a school nutrition employee with Lynchburg City Schools, and I've worked from the beginning of the pandemic, as have many school nutrition and transportation employees. Many of the school nutrition employees are older and or have underlying health conditions. We've worked tirelessly preparing meals, boarding buses in the heat and the humidity and the rain, and delivering meals to school-age children throughout the city. These meals have gone to Lynchburg City School students, private school students, preschool students, and homeschool students. Our children have benefited from these meals. Families have benefited when they needed a little help the most. I have talked to many parents and LCS employees. Our children are suffering from a lack of just being with their friends, suffering from a lack of consistency in their daily lives, suffering from a lack of education. Some are suffering from physical abuse without any intervention from the people who are in their place of safety, the classroom. Am I concerned about the coronavirus? You bet I am. I'm in that high-risk age group. I'm not only concerned about the physical health of children, I'm also concerned about their educational health and their mental health. Not all children can learn in a remote environment. I would not have been able to learn in a remote environment. 2 of my 4 children would not have been able to learn in a remote environment. I lost my place, sorry. It is preposterous to even consider it for all, even for a few weeks. What about the children whose parents have to work? Who will monitor their students' daily progress? Some will be in daycare, with others and adults will run those daycare centers. Is that any different from those children being in school? Many of these children have been in daycare since the pandemic started. Many have been at home with parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. Some have even been left to their own devices. While it is not the job of educators to provide child care, the job of educators is to provide an education. Children cannot be educated if they don't have the tools with which to be educated. For some children, the most valuable and an important tool for them is the 4 walls of their classroom. Can I have just a few more seconds? I'm almost done. Years of studies have shown students lose valuable information in just the summer months. It has been a very long summer break for our students. It is time to go back to the business of educating our children. Please, for the sake of the mental and educational health of our students, let's get back to the business of educating our children in the classroom. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Travis. We appreciate you coming. Andrew Glover.
Good afternoon, members of the Lynchburg City School Board. My name is Andrew Glover. In addition to being a parent of 2 LCS students, I also represent the Conservative Parents of Lynchburg Group, which has recently doubled in size in response to caregivers' beliefs that Lynchburg parents have the right to determine what is best for their families, and that students need to return to face-to-face instruction as soon as possible. I have today a presentation, and I will get to that in a second, but I want to address something that's changed within the last 24, 48 hours. I am hearing once again that the Lynchburg City School Board is once again, for the 3rd time, considering changing how school will be used. That kids in first, pre-K, K, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, these kids that need foundational elements of school will not be able to provide that education in an in-class environment if their parent chooses. Why are we keep repeating the same conversation over and over again? With that, I do want to thank the Lynchburg City School Board for their actions last week when you collectively recognized that importance of face-to-face instruction and giving parents the option to sending their students back to school for face-to-face instruction immediately for grade school kids and within 2 weeks for the rest of the student population. The school board is in a position to make one of the most impactful decisions that the LCS school board has ever had to make. As one of our group members recently noted, the LCS school board is not only between a rock and a hard place, but at the same time facing both the fire and the frying pan. You are not in an enviable position regardless of what direction you decide to steer the school system. There will be disagreement and contentment. That is why the conservative parents of Lynchburg continue to maintain that the decision should not be made universally for all parents, but rather let the parents make the decision for their families. As a part of that, I again come before you to request full-time face-to-face options for parents. With the school year upon us, we recognize that this may not be happening on day one, no matter how much we want that to happen. However, what the school board can do is immediately start exploring the options and direct school administrators to present a viable plan to you by the next work session to get kids back to school full-time. The plan does not need to rely on the school providing all services traditionally made available to students. For example, the school currently has a plan to provide transportation to 50% of the school population based on the restricted busing capacity. If a parent chooses the full-time face-to-face option, it is reasonable in the current climate to request that the parents find transportation for the other 50% of the school week. Depending on the results of the survey that's been out, 50% of those parents may already be willing to do this anyway. Are these types of concessions ideal? No, not at all. But they provide students the opportunity to get back to a normal educational environment where they can excel. A return to face-to-face instruction is especially important for elementary and middle school students who have been out of school for 6 months and are already starting from behind and will not be able to get ahead with a 2-day option school week. For a segment of these students in second grade and below, LCS is not even planning to provide a Chromebook device for their students to learn on. Last week, I spoke on the importance of face-to-face instruction, and while I could reiterate many of those points to you, I think you all collectively observed that in-person, face-to-face school is the end goal. So let me share with you some observations by our group and some solutions that surrounding counties are able to reach in their 4 to 5 day schedule. First off, I want to reiterate that the proposed ideas recognize that ultimately it should be the parents who choose whether to send their kids back to school for face-to-face learning or leverage the remote option that LCS is already making available. We heard tonight that is a great option for some people. One of the options the LCS has stated that you'll make available is off-site learning centers. However, if parents are willing to send their students to off-site learning centers, they are likely willing to send their students to normal 5-day-a-week school sessions. I would even argue that parents are willing to send their kids for 2 days. They're willing to send them for full-time. If LCS provides classes on a full-time schedule, you will actually limit the risk of virus spread because students will only be interacting with their peer group in their own classroom instead of spreading it across multiple classes, multiple grades, multiple schools. I have lots of other recommendations. I am out of time. I thank you for your consideration. Please do not let our children down.
Thank you, Mr. Glover. Our next speaker will be Carl Luce. He will come in.
Setup. That's the first time I've seen it. Well, good evening, school board members. I am Carl Lewis, president of the Lynchburg Education Association, and I know you've had a busy time of it, especially this last week, so let me get right to the point. Having just been back in the building, having watched the data dramatically change over the course of the last week, and having weighed the benefits and costs of blended learning for the first quarter, I can say that I'm convinced now more than ever that it is imperative that LCS have remote learning for the fall. I won't go into great detail about the data. Dr. Brennan is far more qualified than I to present that information. But it is a fact from the data and yesterday's City Council presentation that this is the most dangerous time for this virus in this area. Having been in the building today and seen some of the expectations for staff has me deeply concerned about the realities of in-person instruction. First of all, some of our most vulnerable staff members work in transportation, but none of the students will be screened until after they've arrived at school, putting our drivers at the greatest risk. Doctors say for staff to spend all day in the classroom or on the bus, they would need extensive PPE provided to them, not just masks, but proper masks and goggles or face shields, gloves, and many even recommend gowns. Who will be providing this to staff? We're talking about serving breakfast and lunch in the classrooms. Our maintenance staff can tell you all about the bug and rodent problems we currently have in school. We can all recognize the reality that this will only get worse by eating all over the building. Today, staff members in the secondary schools were told that they needed to monitor the bathrooms to make sure there were not too many students in there at once, to monitor the hallway to make sure masks were worn in the hallway, and to wipe down desks prior to the next class, all at the same time. Kids won't have lockers, so they'll be carrying backpacks with them all day long, which is a safety hazard in and of itself. Students will have access not only to cell phones, but also to whatever contraband they might be able to fit in there. And you want to guess how many handrails you have in your public schools? But these are just a few of the hundreds of issues that we will have to deal with in having in-person instruction through a pandemic. Another concern some of the board shared was for aides, assistants, bus drivers, and other educational professionals who would be impacted by remote learning. Rest assured that these staff members are an integral part of what we do each and every day in the classrooms and would continue to be essential under remote learning. We need to do a better job than we did utilizing these vital employees in the spring, and we certainly will. People on the board and in the community seem to think that students and staff would have the opportunity to choose all remote instruction. But for staff, that's just not the case. As Dr. Edwards explained, it's just not possible to open the schools without enough staff members to drive the buses, prepare the food, teach the classes, and so on. Check with the HR department. See how many staff have asked for remote working opportunities. While it would be great for if the division could accommodate all staff requests, it's just not possible. So some people are stuck between having to choose between their job and their survival. Don't force them into that choice. If you think staff will be protected financially from COVID-19, don't believe everything you read. Insurance companies have been making it extremely difficult for staff to claim COVID relief, forcing people to go through very complicated steps to prove when and where the staff member contracted the virus. I acknowledge that there are problems with remote learning. Parents, school employees, and community members have brought some of those problems up to you. They have valid concerns. That is why we need to make the decision to go with remote learning today. We need time to address these concerns and mitigate the issues to provide an equitable educational experience to the students of Lynchburg. Last week, Dr. Edwards spoke of the work our Return to Learn team has put in, and some on the board worried about all that work going by the wayside. First, let me echo Dr. Edwards' sentiments about amazing work this group did. Let me also let you know that choosing remote learning doesn't lay waste to all of that work. Remember, under the current plan, half of the work was going to be done remotely. We would just expand on what they've already done. You've already heard here tonight the great progress this group has made. There's no perfect answer here. There's no choice that's going to make everybody happy. But there is a choice that will keep everybody safe. Choose safety. Open the year with remote learning for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carl. At this point, I want to find out from Tina and Amy, do we need to queue up a phone call? We do not have one? All right, Dr. Edwards, how much time do we have left?
16 minutes, 20 seconds.
All right, we have 16 minutes, and so Vice Chair Brennan and myself will attempt to read as many of these submitted public comments, and we'll start with Dr. Brennan.
Dr. Coleman and Dr. Edwards and I decided we could leave our masks off so we could make sure this was clear. So we will do that for this section. First communication is from Pamela Minkler. Hi all, my name is Pamela Minkler and I have a rising 4th grader at the Go Center and a rising 7th grader at Dunbar this year. I first want to say that I really appreciate the fact that you all are giving us some options for this year. I'm a physician, and I believe that with our numbers in Lynchburg going up at this point, it's not safe for our children to be physically in school. I like that if the current plan holds, we have the option to choose virtual education for them. I fully understand that for some families, the virtual option presents a logistical nightmare. While my husband and I both work, we are lucky in that we have family members who can provide childcare and flexible schedules at work with the ability to take the children with us or work from home if needed. We know that these options are not available for most families and that there are children who, for one reason or another, legitimately need to be in school this year and might not choose to go virtual. I do feel pretty strongly that, while options are nice, you all currently have them flipped from where they should be. I would like to see virtual the default at this point, with the ability for families to opt in to in-person instruction, which would have to be provided by teachers who also opted in. I think it should be the individual teacher and family's responsibility to opt in to potential exposure to COVID on school property, rather than the responsibility of families who cannot or do not want to risk exposure to opt out. Just my 2 cents. Do with that what you will. I know you're all in a very tough position and there's no right answer, and I wish you all the best.
This public comment is coming from Jen Staten to the members of the school board. We are standing with our teachers, staff, and you all. We trust you to make the virtual option work so that teachers, staff, and their families, as well as all of our families, can stay healthy as possible in this time of public health crisis. We know that our community will come together to solve this child care crisis. We trust and believe that you, the LCS School Board, will give clear direction on August the 4th that at least the first 9 weeks is going to be virtual, with the rest of the 2020-2021 year dependent on current data and research provided by the VDH, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the CDC. You cannot ignore the COVID data for our area or the mayor and the president of Centra's warnings that our hospital system is nearly overwhelmed. We believe in LCS teachers and know that students will receive an innovative, passionate, creative, and well-prepared virtual instruction this fall. We are grateful to all of the teachers who have spent their summer planning and creating this new platform. We realize that asking them to teach both in person and virtually is asking them to double their workload, be in 2 places at once, and would mean that neither group of students would be well served. We know that last spring virtual effort wasn't what they will be offered this year. We support you as you work tirelessly to keep our community, and equally important, your faculty and staff and their families healthy. Jen Staten.
This communication is from Anthony Sparks. Good afternoon. I wanted to give a written statement that this is not a good idea to send kids back to school. One of the biggest reasons is that as COVID cases are on the rise here in Lynchburg, it's a bigger risk for kids getting sick and affecting their households. And as a father of special needs kids, I understand that they need the in-person learning. But at 4 and 6 years old, they still put their hand in their face and mouth, halfway wash their hands, and asking a child to wear a mask is impossible. So this one-size-fits-all traditional learning can't work in this day and time, and 5 months ago school was closed and the school board made other ways to help students to keep up with learning packs and other things. We have the technology to do Zoom and FaceTime and other things like that, and I think that should be the focus, that they should do online school until things get better.
Jill Nance Wall. Please consider our youngest learners when making your decision tonight. While the older students could successfully go 100% virtual, it will be hard for our students K through 3 to be virtual. The learning loss will be tremendous. If there is a push to go all online, please allow an exception for our youngest students to return at least those 2 days a week. Thank you.
This communication is from John Foster, to whom it may concern. I am the father of 4 LCS elementary students whose other parent is an LCS teacher. First, I want to express how irresponsible it would be to allow anyone to return to in-person instruction in the face of rising COVID cases in our city. Even more irresponsible to send the younger children back first, the ones least likely to protect themselves from this virus. Education is important, but not more important than life, health, and safety. As I mentioned, 5 of my 8-person family is affected by your decisions. 1 exposure could easily wipe us out. I could opt to keep my children at home, but their mother does not have the option to teach from home, unless you make that option. Please be responsible and sensitive to all options and needs. Let's make all education virtual through January 2021.
This comment is coming from Jennifer and Clay Williams, dear School Board of LCS. I believe that in-person learning is best. However, due to the rapidly rising COVID-19 positive cases and hospitalizations in Lynchburg, my husband and I are of the opinion that the only safe option for students, teachers, staff, and families, not to mention the greater Lynchburg community, is to have the first 9 weeks of school be 100% remote learning. Our daughter does not learn well remotely, but we believe that her safety as well as everyone else's comes first. Educational gaps can be filled, but lives cannot be replaced. Many people who get this virus don't die, but instead suffer terribly from symptoms which can last for months or cause permanent damage. Placing groups of students in an enclosed room with poor ventilation is a guarantee that the virus will spread quickly, regardless of social distancing. We are already seeing examples of this in schools across the country and the world that have chosen to resume in-person instruction. Please err on the side of caution and start the first 9 weeks of school 100% remotely. Thank you.
This communication is from Samantha Raiter, R-A-I-T-T-E-R. Good afternoon. I am a 15-year veteran teacher. I love my students dearly and have missed not being with them since March. I am eager to teach them how to read. I am eager to have courageous conversations about BLM and our town. I love my job, my coworkers, my families, my students, and my content. I want nothing more than to be with them all again. This has been my second day back in my school building, and I am wondering why we think opening our doors to children in a few weeks is a good idea. Our numbers in the Central Virginia region continue to climb, and our ICU beds are dwindling. Lynchburg University, Randolph College, Sweetbriar, and Liberty students have yet to flood our town. Why are we rushing back when we know things will get worse? I think that the best thing that our students and staff need right now is decisive action from the board, remote learning only for all students in pre-K through 12 for at least the first semester. That also extends to teaching staff. We should be trusted to do our jobs either at school or at home. Respectfully, Samantha Raiter.
7 minutes.
Okay. This is coming from Portia Brown. I feel the kids should stay home at least until October. I am a single mom and I work all day, so I feel that the virtual learning should be at a time when parents can be there with their kids to help them. Either have the virtual class start after 5 p.m. or have it pre-recorded so that they can do it at their own discretion. I feel it is too soon to send the kids back to school, especially at the elementary level. Thank you.
This is from Tammy Purdue. Hello, my name is Tammy Purdue, and I have one student who is a senior in the early college program, which will be online for the fall, one student who is a rising freshman at ECG, and a second grader at BHS. I initially was very excited for my children to return to school in person, even at a reduced capacity, but now with COVID trends, I am more nervous about it. I am a nurse practitioner in the local healthcare community and have significant concerns about increasing transmission with children returning. Though children may be at lower risk of detrimental outcomes, our teachers are not. When we have an exposure in the schools, it will cause unplanned closures and monopolize resources that can be better utilized other places if we can be proactive and make a decision to put all of our efforts into remote learning now. Being remote only allows us to focus on effective online learning until it's safer to return. This is different from my original survey reply. In reality, as a working parent, it is easier for me to have lead time and a plan to provide for my children instead of trying to judge a last-minute plan due to unplanned closures. Regardless of the board's decision, parents need to know now if they can make arrangements for their children. School is to start in 3 weeks, and I cannot move forward with any additional plans until there's the decision made and information about cohort assignments and such are disseminated. Thank you for your consideration and keeping the interest in the LCS families in focus. Thanks, Tammy Purdue.
Kiana White wants us to know, my name is Kiana and I have 2 kids who attend LCS. I'm really worried about my children attending school this semester because of the rising cases in the community and also because of the health condition of my youngest son. My youngest son will be attending the special needs program at Hutchinson Learning Center, and he has chronic lung disease and asthma. He's at a higher risk than anyone. He would be unable to keep a mask on. My oldest son will be attending Paramount Elementary for kindergarten. I don't want to put my children at risk of being exposed to COVID. I'm currently 7 months pregnant, and that could also put my health at risk. I'm not comfortable with my kids attending school right now, and I'm very capable with homeschooling them or even with them doing virtual learning. I hope that my concern and opinion will be considered. I really think parents should have a choice when it comes to their children. Every person has a different situation and circumstance, and if you give more options, then that will help instead of forcing kids to go back without knowing the family situation. With my youngest son being special needs, I really do understand how serious it is for that one-on-one learning. I'm very capable of doing this. I know exactly what the needs to work on, and I've already set up goals for him, and I love my kids enough to keep them at home and protect them from this virus.
About 4 minutes.
Okay. This is from Josh and Alicia Key to the Lynchburg City School Board. Good evening. We are the parents of 2 LCS students, and we are writing you on behalf of our children. We have serious concerns about the 3 options for return to learn being presented this evening. Option 3 gives us the most cause for concern for our children. It is vitally important to us that our children return to some form of in-person education on time. There are many reasons for this, but we only have time for a few. The first is that we have seen a significant decline in the mental health of both of our children. They are in serious need of social interaction with their peers as well as some semblance of a routine. Second, we both work full-time as essential workers, healthcare and mental health. One of us has already had to exhaust all leave options with our employer in order to manage thus far. Child care providers in our city are currently full with no options for additional children. If LCS chooses option 3, it is likely that one of us will need to quit our job to provide care, education for our children. Of course, this would add other challenges such as providing food and shelter for our family. Third, online learning is challenging for both of our children. We learned in the spring that it just does not work well for them. This gives us concern that they will fall behind in their education, which would be a shame considering they are both in the gifted program with LCS. Given these concerns, we are kindly asking that you vote to move forward with either option 1 or option 2. While neither of these are ideal for us, we believe that providing 2 days of in-person instruction for our children is significantly better than a virtual-only option. This will allow us to keep our jobs that are providing an essential service to this city. We understand that the safety of your teachers and staff is important. However, we would ask that you consider the fact that there are thousands of essential workers who have been working full-time for our community since the start of the pandemic. These employers have managed a way to provide appropriate protection for their employees while fulfilling their responsibilities to the community. It is our opinion that educating our children is essential. Therefore, giving LCS the responsibility to provide education that is adequate for all is just a It is our opinion that educating our children is essential. Therefore, giving LCS the responsibility to provide education that is adequate for all is not just a select few. Please also consider the most recent CDC article highlighting the importance of children returning to in-person instruction. As you well know, there are many issues at stake besides COVID. such as abuse, neglect, hunger, mental illness, to name a few. Our children are suffering in ways other than potential exposure to this virus. There is also scientific evidence that show that children are, 1, less vulnerable to this virus, and 2, are not primary vectors to spread this virus. In closing, we ask again that you move forward with either option 1 or 2 in order to meet the needs of all CS students. Thank you for your time.
55 seconds.
This is from Erin Elwell. First, I would like to thank the board for your continued hard work and dedication to our students and staff during these challenging times. Since remote learning will be a new part of our children's lives, could you please walk us through what a day of learning looks like? I'm particularly interested in high school, Zoom classes, pre-recorded lessons, etc.
27 seconds.
I have one statement here that was forwarded to us that does not it's a private message that was sent, but wanted to go with cases, hospitalizations, and deaths now increasing exponentially. Why is the school board members risking the lives of our youngest students and staff? In the last week, the deaths are up by 80% in the greater Lynchburg area. All right, we want to thank the public for your in-person comments, and as well as those who submitted comments through email. We appreciate it. That now moves us to item E1 on our agenda, the June 2020 financial report, and we will turn this over to Dr. Edwards.
Yes, and any minute now, Ms. Laconich will magically appear. Oh, wow, there she is. Hello, Ms. Laconich.
All right. Good evening. Tonight, I'm going to present the financial statements through June 30th. This is our fiscal year end. The first thing I want to point out is this is not the very final. We are still working on year-end transactions, getting ready for our audit that starts next week. But this was the most up to date. There hasn't been any large changes, but I just wanted to point that out because we do have some pending items that I will discuss later on. So compared to where we were in May, our adjusted budget is still the same. The revenue received to date, we received 98.39% of our revenue. Our expenditures to date, we were at 94.48%. We still have the encumbrances that we are still truing up, and that takes us to 95.53%. When you look at the revenue and seeing that it's slower than what was anticipated, I just wanted to remind you that we did have that cut of the $1.5 million from the city, as well as we had a prior year encumbrance that we referenced at the top section of the $850,804.44, and that was funds that were withheld from the prior year to fund some open POs, and that has already been received, so you're not going to see it reflected there. I also have updated the health insurance summary, and one of the things that we did do, and I mentioned it at the last board meeting, was with our claims that we were looking at having to do another direct expense to get the payables up, and we did do an additional allocation of $650,000 in June, and you will see that the ending balance is $1.3 million, and we still have the reserve at the city. One thing that's different in this also is you'll see that there is another line under the employer contribution that says summer payroll, and that's reflecting the July summer payouts to our employees. That expense does get pushed back, so it's just another item. I wanted to be transparent and put that out there. So attached, I've provided the updated revenue report and the expenditure reports, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Any board members have a question for Mr. Carnage? Dr. Gupta?
I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
So your revenue is 99 million, your expenses including future encumbrances is about 96 million. Just out of curiosity, so what do we do with the $3 million excess? Do we return it back to the state, or we keep it for future?
Well, some of that is actually your textbook reserve that is restricted. And the school division, when COVID hit, we were in the middle of a textbook adoption, and we pushed pause on that. That will actually stay. It goes back to the city, but it is put into a textbook fund reserve. So of that surplus, that it was around $672,000 of that will have to go in there. We are required, because the state gives us the money for that reason, we have to use it for that reason. The remainder will go back to the city, but part of the budget discussions when we were working with city council was that their intent was to let us have back some of the fund balance so that it would assist us in the future year.
And what was that fund balance agreement? Was to keep it in a reserve or to be able to for general expenses?
They did not specify, because it was just an intent. They could not state specifics in an intent. But when we were faced with having to have an additional cut to the city appropriation, that was one of the items that was discussed to try to alleviate some of the pain we're going to have this year with less funding. Was that the intent was that some of the fund balance that we received, where it normally goes back to the city for one-time expenditures, usually through CIP, that they would entertain the notion of returning it back to the school division to assist with some of the expenditures this year, because we did have to decrease our budget.
I have another.
Do you have another question, Dr. Gupta?
So, in terms of health insurance, I have expressed concern that this month we took out $785,560 as a premium, and we have about $1.049 million in terms of benefits being doled out. So the gap has increased again. Now you have put in $748,000, I'm assuming, for those unfilled positions back into this pot, that non-payroll contributions. I don't know where they're coming from. Are they?
We expensed it to the health insurance expense. So when you do look at some of the expenditure lines, you will see some, and under the payroll lines, that they do show a deficit. But that's because we have to report it in the area in which the expense was occurring. So it did cause some areas to go over budget, but it was a health insurance cost. We just happened to know that this was, we have been monitoring this throughout the school year, knowing that we were trending higher and making modifications, and we had the spending freeze. We were being so cautious and conservative because of the uncertainty, not only of the health insurance claims, which were trending higher, but also the uncertainty of our funding from the state, most notably the sales tax and the lottery fund, that we basically, when we did the spending freeze, we did the hiring freeze, it was just to shore up everything for all these unknowns.
We put $750,000 in fall into the healthcare thing. There was moved 700 to 750 was moved. Mm-hmm. Now we're moving another 748,000. That's almost $1.5 million we have moved, on top of what the revenue is coming in terms of employee and employer contribution. And my fear is that's not sustainable. If we don't have those excess revenues or savings, how will we sustain this model going forward?
Well, one of the things that we did was that we increased the contributions for next year, which is going to, just in operating, it was over $1 million more being contributed to this fund. And when we put those rates back to what they were 2 years ago, that's also going to trickle down into other entities, such as that's not operating, the grant funded. Those rates will follow with it to give us even more contributions, and we will just continue to monitor it. We still have the $2 million reserve at the city if it's not sufficient. The last few weeks it has started trending down, but as I feel like one month I'm telling you it's great, the next minute I'm telling you it's just a roller coaster ride. We just continue to monitor it. I do think that the decision to put those contributions back to what they were is going to be a great relief for us, and we will just continue to monitor it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. And I do want to thank, Dr. Brennan wants to raise a question, and I believe that Dr. Gupta submitted questions earlier in advance, and I do want to encourage everyone where you can so that staff members can be adequately prepared for our questions. Dr. Brennan?
Since we're looking at everything through the COVID lens, and this was the question I think I did pass on to you, are there been any significant effects of closing the schools over the past 3 months since we've done that? For example, it looks like bus rentals are down, as far as revenue goes, it looks like that the budget for busing is up as far as expenses go. Do those have any lasting effects, or are those just variables?
If we continue to not be having the transportation, we did lower the budget for this for this current year now, when we did the budget, because of the fact we knew that if there was delay in reopening schools, we were going to have less revenue in those areas. The offset of that is, if you're not having that bus transportation, you're not having the fuel, you're not having the salaries, so there is some offset to it. I'm happy to say that, when we were preparing for all these unknowns and the state was saying, be prepared for up to a 50% cut in your sales tax, be prepared, that they did actually suspend the supplemental lottery funds. They did true that up. We got that money back. If you look actually at the revenue on the sales tax, it looks like we received more than that was budgeted.
Right.
And actually what happened was they actually update those numbers, and those numbers were updated that we were supposed to receive about $300,000 more. And we did not get that. We got a little bit of that. And if you were looking at the historical trends, we did those last 3 months, they were down, based off of what they were the prior 4 years. But it wasn't that significant decrease that they were saying to prepare for. So I think we were very fortunate. The things that we did see were the facility rentals, which we weren't renting the facilities. We didn't have the field trip billings. We didn't get some of the utility reimbursed from school nutrition because they weren't in those buildings. So we had some things that we did experience a decrease because of COVID. But again, some of them have an offset that you didn't have the expenditures. And we also had our Medicaid money that came in at the end of the year that's not part of our budget, and that helped offset it.
And then the last question is, I know we carried over encumbrances of like $800,000 last year. I know this is not the final report for this year, but that number of $1,554,000, will the encumbrances be in a pretty high range, you think, for this year, or you're not ready to make that decision
We are
yet?
almost close to finalizing that, and actually that is probably going to be really close to that number. And the reason school buses make up $917,000 of that. And really the remainder is things that were just back ordered, things that were ordered. Some of these orders were back in December, and just due to COVID and probably some other situations, but primarily COVID, things are back ordered. And but for the most part, it is just the bulk of it is those buses. And that will be there. When I looked at it again today, it was $1,050,000. So it's not changing dramatically.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any other questions for Ms. Laconich? Then we thank you for E1 by information today, and we appreciate the ongoing fine work that you do in that area. Thank you very much. If the board would afford me the opportunity, I would like to advance us through item F, and then we could take a 5-minute break before we entertain item G on our agenda. F is our consent agenda, and the items on the consent agenda you have had the opportunity to hear discussion on previously. That would include our school board meeting minutes from July the 7th, the instruction and program policies, the governance policies, and we also have human resource report that has been presented to you, along with Human Resource Report Addendum 1 and Human Resource Report Addendum number 2. And so the chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda for items 1 through 6 as listed. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Been moved by Ms. Morrison, seconded by Dr. Carter, that we approve the consent agenda. If there are no questions or discussions, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and now Dr. Edwards will make her announcements.
Certainly, and I will ask the board clerk to make sure that the Human Resource Report Addendum 1 is available to the public, since the board has voted. And with that, I would like to announce and congratulate the newest members, and some not so new. They've moved in positions in some of our administrative positions in Lynchburg City Schools. And I will start with how it is written on our agenda. We recently had an opening due to one of our assistant principals moving to associate principal at EC Glass for an assistant principalship there. And I'm happy to report that our very own Kristen Rhodes from Fort Hill will be the new EC Glass assistant principal. We also had an opening at RS Payne for an assistant principalship there. Renee Anderson, who was the assistant principal, has taken on the role of the pre-K coordinator, and we voted for that last month. And replacing Renee is, again, our very own Lori McVicker, who is an instructional coach at Bass, who will now be the assistant principal at RS Payne. So we welcome Lori to the administrative team family. We had a position that was vacated when Janine took on the lead role as director in special education. So her secondary supervisor of special ed position is available. And again, we'd like to welcome one of our own family members, team members, Kim Patesell, who will be taking over that position as supervisor of special education. Two more. We had a deputy superintendent position that was open, and we would like to congratulate and welcome to that position Miss Amy Pugh, who was here tonight doing a presentation as our deputy superintendent. And last but not least, joining the Lincoln Middle School family as an assistant principal when Miss Kathy Dales took on the role of principal, coming from Bedford County, and we welcome him just as if he was a Lynchburg City School employee, Mr. Mike Thompson, so joining us at Lincoln Middle School. And that completes our LCS administrative family joining us, and I'd just like to say congratulations to everyone, and I'm looking forward to working with you.
Dr. Edwards, you've been doing some fine work, and congratulations to everyone. At this time, we're going to take a 5-minute break and return and get into G1 on our return to learn discussion. agenda.
Let me get my microphone on here.
Everybody remember to put your mics back on.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
This is a very, very important item, as some of the public comments and speakers, probably some of the more important decisions that a school board would ever have to make, ever. And so at this time, we do want our board to be clear that this is an action item and that we are focusing on reviewing the current status and trends of COVID-19 in the Lynchburg community and revisiting the discussion regarding the start date for in-person learning for students. So I want to begin by giving Dr. Edwards an opportunity to share. Dr. Brennan, please.
Okay. So as Dr. Coleman said, we are looking at the start date for in-person learning for students. Staff did return to the buildings today in small cohorts and in their classrooms, and they did begin training for both hybrid, blended, I should say, and in-person learning, which is the 2 days and 3 days off, as well as remote learning. I do want to point out that we did get an increased number of staff. That you had the flow chart for how staff make a decision of whether or not they themselves are at high risk or a family member at high risk. So we had that flow chart, and on Friday we spent, our HR director spent pretty much all day reviewing and making decisions about staff. Monday was slated to be the same. We do have a good portion of staff who would like to select an option, who have expressed concern about either themselves or a family member who may be compromised. As we look at running both remote and the blended learning, with the number of family members who are selecting the remote-only option, which at our as of Friday the 31st, the last data that we had, I think we had about 41% of the families, 41% of the students, I should say, because some families have more than one child. So 41% of the students having been responded as a remote only or not. And then of that percentage of respondents, 41% of the respondents, so that's not all of our kids, selected remote only. And in order to do remote only and the hybrid option at the same time, especially if you look at an elementary level, you have to split teachers because staff can't be teaching 4 days a week and also providing the services that Ms. Pugh and the entire team outlined Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday as well. So we are finding ourselves a little bit questioning the staff capacity at this point. We did have high attendance today, and it was definitely different walking through the buildings and looking at a single staff member in a classroom and isolated from other staff members. We've also received, questions and comments from community members, family members, with concerns about if when we were shifting from phase 2 to phase 3, we were looking for a consistent decrease over 2 weeks before we moved into opening businesses. Why aren't we looking for a consistent decrease over 2 weeks before opening schools? And we're in a position right now in Lynchburg City where we're seeing an increase while we're thinking of adding the in-person learning. From us, the administrative team, we do feel strongly about the safety of everyone, and including our transportation, nutrition, bus drivers who, as you heard earlier, have been doing this since day one when we closed, our teaching staff. But it's not just our teaching staff that are affected by COVID. The latest stats talk about it being the 20 to 29-year-old age group. So we're not only talking about teaching staff or nutrition workers or bus drivers who are 65 and older. It's a bigger group of folks. We are committed to doing a remote-only learning option with, and I shouldn't even say remote only, but remote mostly. I want to say a remote mostly learning option, understanding that not every kid has a device. So we have to reach out to those students. We have to provide some alternate learning for those students. And even for students and families that do have a device, their needs might be vast. And that's why I had the entire team come tonight, speak to ELL, speak to students with special needs, speak to, after we do an assessment, kids who perhaps their learning gaps are so vast that other methods, maybe it is tutoring, a one-on-one, it's an office hour, it's a come to the school and work with in not necessarily a classroom setting of 12, but maybe just that teacher and that student. So we are open to the flexibility, as I said, of how do we bring our children along, because we recognize that a remote mostly, instead of remote only, may not work for every single child. But we do feel strongly that we can deliver a quality program. We are concerned, and having read the news, if my staff become affected, it will require that we start shutting down classrooms, shutting down buildings, which will impact everyone in that either classroom or that building or that bus or that learning pod. And when you magnify that at the high school level where kids are going to be changing classes, we've multiplied the problem. It's not just the same as that. So I did want to share that. Last week I was concerned about the in-person start date for August 24th, which is just in a couple of weeks. And I was concerned, and this week I'm more concerned with what I'm seeing and what I'm experiencing. I will say my staff is committed to delivering a high quality program. And many of them, as you heard, love the kids. They absolutely believe in in-person learning. They want the children back, but we all want them back safely. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our resident expert over here in the field, Dr. Brennan.
So I'm going to just very briefly and not reiterate what we said before. I'm not going to talk about national levels, state levels, just talk about local levels, which very briefly, this was brought up at the press conference yesterday, but Central Virginia has sort of crossed that margin of having more than 1,000 cases now in the area. Compared to last week, that's about another 20% increase for this area. We talk about percentage of positive tests. We were 2% in May, we went up to 5%, we're now up to 8% as of August 21st as far as percentages. And above 5 is a problem. So all those numbers are trending that way. Just to give you a little different variety, I was also going to show you this. Everyone's probably familiar with the Virginia COVID dashboard, and I'm really pleased to have the new Deputy Superintendent driving this for me. I feel this is really high class. If we can get that second slide, that'd be great.
I will. Do you want the dashboard or the second slide?
The second slide.
Okay.
Yeah, the one
My
after that.
apologies. I thought you wanted the.
You don't want that, just those two graphs, Amy, if I could get those.
My apologies.
No problem. So this is just showing what's happened over so this is the Virginia Department of Health COVID data just for Lynchburg, and those numbers on the left are looking at cumulative number of cases, and I put in the dates for our board meeting. So on July 7th, when we first talked about return to learn, there were 169 cumulative cases in Lynchburg. When we talked about on the 21st, there were 207 cases. We met last week, there were 370. There are now 489 cases. So obviously the trend is going up. On the right is the number of positive tests on a daily basis, and Dr. Gately mentioned this yesterday. I think that as of like Friday for the entire Central Virginia area, there were like 80 new cases. For Lynchburg, there's now about 30 or 40 a day. And then the next slide, Amy, please. Everyone talks about different modeling, and I'm just going to, this is the last slide, but just to give you an idea. So people try to predict on a mathematical basis what's going to happen. And so this is the UVA model that the Department of Health uses, and it's on their dashboard. So on the left is what they're predicting is going to happen with number of cases in the state. And there's obviously, there was that first blip that we saw back, that's May and beginning of June. And then that line that you see there that says today, that is like August 2nd. And what they're predicting for the month of August is that there's going to be an increased number. The dark line that goes off to the left is if there's nothing is done, if there's no intervention, people don't wear their masks, that's the surge. To the right is what happens if people start doing a little bit better. That's for the state. They have this for every metropolitan area. And to the right is Lynchburg's model, is what they're saying for Lynchburg. So they're saying that as of the beginning of August, In Lynchburg, we were seeing about 400 cases. We were seeing about 400 cases total up to that time, which was correct. And they're predicting that the line for surge and for what's going to happen to us is just going to increase for the month of August. Now, that's predicted. No one knows, but it certainly is not going in the right direction, and hopefully those numbers will be less. But I think it's just saying what Dr. Evers alluded to and what was said at the press conference yesterday, which is the line is going in the wrong direction for Lynchburg and Central Virginia. Thank you, Dr. Coleman.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards, and thank you, Dr. Brennan. If you don't mind, I'm going to take this off so I can hear and manage this portion very efficiently and effectively. I do want to remind the board of our governance norms and protocols, and essentially what makes us great is that we will hear each opinion, but ultimately act as one. And what I would like to do now is start with School Board Member Belle Evans. Please be mindful. We have option 1, option 2, option 3, as it's recorded on our agenda. One of those options you can have as your preference, and so I'm going to go to each board member. You can state whatever you would like to state about this discussion, your preference of an option. If there's some burning content question that you need to know to better inform you, you can do that as well. We'll go around to each person, and at the end of going around one time, if someone still has a burning statement or comment to make, we'll entertain that, and then we're going to ask for a motion regarding this matter. School Board Member Evans.
Okay, I do have a question.
Sure.
But I want to wait on that. I have been very supportive of getting the kids back in school the whole time, wanting to get them in. And then I have days where we go home after a meeting and look at those numbers and I read the data and I'm like, can I live with this decision of saying we're going to start back 2 days a week and we're going to hope for the best and get everything settled down? And for me, as much as I want them in school and see the importance, I don't think I could live with saying I want to send them to school right now. So I'm leaning toward option 3. But I do have a question about people right now are able to weight train, even though we're not in school. They're able to do some things, and I'm wondering, is there a possibility of keeping that in place if people are doing it voluntarily, just to keep kids engaged? That's a huge worry of mine, that kids are going to become so unengaged, that if we've already got them in there doing stuff for football and doing stuff, how do we keep that going?
So all of the options kind of have us in a phase 2 model, what they say, if you don't bring back the 6th to 12th grade. And in phase 2, even if pre-K to 3, the original phase 2, we're in, you could still do those training pieces in phase 2. So we do want to leave as much, for lack of a word, normalcy as we can in our program, as well as keep in mind what I said at the beginning, there are still going to be kids who need us. We're going to have that contact with them, even from an instructional level. It might be from a social emotional level, or it might be from an athletics physical health level.
Okay, this one last question too is, I understand parents needing to plan and trying to come up with dates and everything. So we could say remote for the first 9 weeks, but that certainly does not mean September 30th, if this prediction did not happen, that we cannot look at those numbers and restart before. Correct?
Correct. And what I will say to what the team presented, again, they're presenting both a blended and a remote that are parallel, which makes it easier for us to, if we have to, let's say we started blended, then we had to shut down and go completely remote. All right, well, we got to continue on a remote trail, or vice versa. The goal is to get to in-person learning. So I don't think any of us are sitting here, if COVID magically disappeared in September and October 1st, from then on, there was no risk, I think all of us would be pushing, let's get back in schools and let's get our kids back into in-person learning. So,
so safety-wise, I'm leaning toward the option 3.
Thank you, School Board Member Evans. Board Member Morrison.
Education has been my life, and it's always hard for me not to have kids in school because I know that the relationships that we have with students, it's really important. And, but I cannot in good conscience bring kids back to school with the numbers going up. I am going for option 3, but I am going even further than Bell. Because I think if we say it is not safe to bring kids back to school for face-to-face instruction, then I don't want them back there for anything. I don't think they should be in the weight room. I don't think they should be conditioning. I think if we're going to do it, we need to be consistent.
Thank you, School Board Member Morrison. School Board Member Carter.
I know there's been a lot of discussion regarding the achievement gap, but I think one of the comments we heard earlier stated it just perfectly. At least the child will be living to aspire to achieve versus if something happened. I'm with Mrs. Evans. I just could not live with the fact if we had any type of injuries or deaths to students or employees of LCS. And there's so many risk factors and so many people that can be harmed. And also from the factors, just working with the population, older population, a lot of them are caretakers. So then the child will be going home and they may be at risk of carrying that to the families. And we also have our expert here, and I heard also what Dr. Gately and the Vice President of Centris stated, and I have to go with option number 3.
Thank you.
Now, I do have one question.
Please.
And this was asked, if there's a online virtual component that's been tested and has some fidelity, will we also consider that? Can a child participate in that and stay with LCS?
I'm not
If there's a virtual program out there that has been tested and is effective in training or in education, providing an educational component, can a child participate in that and receive the LCS credit and stay with LCS? If there's another type of virtual program.
And it was also, I think,
Amy?
about also being eligible for sports if they did not enroll in LCS
Correct.
programs.
So we have chosen, as you heard in our conversation earlier, we have chosen for our LCS teachers to develop the curriculum and the learning opportunities that we're presenting to our students. So students need to be enrolled as an active LCS student to participate in that. Now, if there are students who in a physical school building would have participated in an Edgenuity course for credit recovery, those types of things, that we will consider. But for a student who is enrolling in, for instance, a virtual Virginia course and going through that course, they would not get the credit with us here. They would need to participate in our remote learning options and our virtual learning options.
Thank you. School Board Member Brennan.
So as has been mentioned, I kind of wear multiple hats on this board, and one of them are my 2 nieces that I have in our household who I love to get back to school, and they would love to go back to school, and they really want to go to band camp. So I'm not sure I'll be able to go home tonight if I don't vote the right way. But as an infectious disease physician, when we started this process out, whenever it was 2 months ago, I really felt at that time that it was appropriate. The incidence was low in Lynchburg, the numbers were low, children were at lower risk. It was a good idea to move things back. But I just think it's hard to fight the data. I mean, we are really having a problem in our community that's not, it's a real problem, and unfortunately I think it's not going to go away soon. I hope the press conference helps on that was done yesterday. But I think to really protect our children, protect our staff, protect our families, I think we really need to, I personally am going to vote for option number 3. I think that's the safest thing for everyone.
Thank you. I will share my thoughts as School Board Member Coleman. I was very, very excited about trying to do all that we could do to get kids back to in-person instruction as early as possible. The data does not support it. There are subgroups who will be adversely impacted and would create further challenges upon those subgroups. I feel as though that high-quality programming will take place with option 3. I believe that as a parent of 2 daughters, one who is type 1 diabetic, that this is going to be what is best for our students, our staff, and safe homes. So I will be supporting option 3, recognizing, as School Board Member Evans clearly articulated, that if there is a change, we are flexible to handle those changes. School Board Member Nilles.
So I saw watched the press conference also. I found it interesting that the cohort being hospitalized and having a relatively accounting for a number of cases is 20 to 29. I've been going to work throughout this whole thing. Teachers, in my opinion, are essential workers also. If education's not critical to our infrastructure, I don't know what else is. What I'm not seeing is, you know, it strikes me the group that went, you know, this age group is, I mean, is this, are these cases that are being transmitted within Lynchburg, or did they go to Myrtle Beach and socialize and come back? You know, it's like, I don't know where that stands. And then in terms of local transmission within Lynchburg, I don't know how significant that is, as opposed to people that are traveling. Mm-hmm. Certainly people have been doing some traveling and getting out, and I don't know how much of that's accounting for these cases here or not. Transportation workers have been working through this. I'm not aware of anybody contracting COVID from that. Certainly the exposure with schools in session would be increased. I'm not denying that. It's I look at the experience in Europe where they have open schools back up. In fact, they're relaxing, you know, the Netherlands has relaxed the masking in schools. Now this is more for the elementary students, but I mean, their experience is suggestive that the children are not at high risk of spreading it amongst themselves, nor to their family members. If the kids get it, it's typically from a family member. That Science Magazine had a nice overview article about that. But there is no real definitive double-blind replicated study that shows what the risk factors are and how to make an objective decision. It's I'm confident how the vote's going to go, but it's like, what's our criteria for opening schools back up? You know, this decision tonight's all about reacting to, you know, the latest numbers from the Virginia Department of Health. And yeah, it's concerning, but what's the criteria that we use to start schools back up again? Is this just kind of, yeah, I'm comfortable now? I'm just asking, you don't have to answer, it's kind of a rhetorical question too, but I don't know what the answer is.
That's a $1 million question there,
anyway,
Dr. Nilles. That's a great question.
Can I just respond just to a couple of things? Okay, sorry. Yep.
For you 1 second.
Yep.
First of all, had you completed? I don't want to stop and take.
Yeah, no, I can.
All right. Did you want an answer to your question? Or was it rhetorical?
It's just where I'm at. It's
all right. Will you accept a comment from Dr.?
That's fine. I'll come back second time around.
Let's
fine.
wait.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right. School Board Member
Sinha.
Sinha, no, I was trying to, I'm clear on you.
We're going to have name cards.
I'm clear on.
I brought handouts. One is the model with all the technical
Those are Gupta and
documentation, so you
Colby's
can
Sinha.
feel competent in that, and the latest charts showing testing values and positivity rates, just for you to have for information purposes. You raised the issue, are these people coming from Myrtle Beach?
There's
Maybe
only
it
one.
is, but they're seeding the virus here, so there's community
woke up.
spread. Transportation staff, they weren't carrying riders. Now they will be. In Europe, where their experience has been different, they have community transmission under control.
Right.
Apples to oranges.
We don't. The criteria, according to the CDC is 14 consecutive days of positive testing rates below 5%, which we are trending upwards. And we also know that we don't have enough testing capability, and the delays in getting results are very problematic. So I see us as having a community problem in a community that hasn't responded well to that problem. And it's a consequence of that. And the troubling, I mean, I really saw concern and alarm in that press conference yesterday. That was very convincing. And you know, when the 1918 pandemic happened, they closed the schools to control transmission. If we open them, we are only adding to the problem of the infection rate. We have to get community control. We have to get it under control in the community, and only the community can do its part. I realize that this creates a lot of problems, but you know, it's a pandemic. There are no good answers, and I'm with the rest. I believe the responsible thing to do for the community to help control the spread and for the safety of our staff and our students is to go with option 3. And until we can get our positivity rate below 5%, 14 days in a row, I don't think we can consider going back to in-person. And as far as doing 5 days a week of in-person, I don't think we'll ever be able to do that until the pandemic is gone, because we have to, we do not have an option to just ignore social distancing, do we?
Not right now, we don't want to.
No. No, but we had to turn in plans. They wouldn't have been accepted. We wouldn't have been allowed to proceed without them. So anybody asking us to do 5 days a week with our students just isn't facing reality of these are the constraints we're having to work with. So a lot of this is choices made for us. But the bottom line is I think we have no choice but to go with remote learning for everybody for at least the first 9 weeks.
Thank you, School Board Member Sinha. School Board Member Gupta.
I'm puzzled. We're discussing it for the third or fourth time because the situation has been evolving. I can understand. And being a father of a girl who has underlying health conditions and gets an IEP from Heritage, people who don't think I have a kid going to Lynchburg City Schools, I'd like her to start her education. I've asked Dr. Edwards, when are we going to start the homebound teachers back? The problem I'm facing, just like Dr. Nilles, is this pandemic is not going to end in 6 weeks, 8 weeks, or 9 weeks. Till the vaccine comes, it'll be very difficult to control community transmission. As you said last time, people may not be using all the best practices we want them to use. Although masks are required, how many people do you see in the stores running around without masks? So, and I know we bound ourselves in option 1, option 2, and option 3. I hope that Mr. Harvey was here today. He said we should go from option 0 to what? Option infinite. And one of those options could be let parents choose if their kid wants to go to school or not. Because I'm concerned about teachers. I expressed that last time too. I'm concerned about teachers who are at my age, who have underlying health conditions and they don't want to put themselves at risk. But there are parents who want to send their kids back to school, and with this decision, they may not be able to do it. And there may be kids who don't have a voice, who don't have a parent at home telling them to go and study. Only school teacher can do that, and those disadvantaged kids will be left behind for these 9 weeks. So what plan do we have to make sure then they don't become part of a historical data? And those are my concerns. None of these choices is best option, but I wish, as I said, Mr. Harvey, we can customize and give people choices, not one size fit all.
Thank you, School Board Member Gupta. At this time, I would like to read something that was given to me by Gary Harvey, and I think it is appropriate for me to read it at this point. He wants to let us know, fellow school board members, as I stated previously, I am unable to be with you tonight due to a standing obligation. I have a staff position as a trainer for the Boy Scouts of America, Order of the Arrow, that requires my attendance at the national meeting. This happens every year, and I have been committed to this since 2012, and I requested to join tonight's meeting via conference call and was informed that that was not possible. I do apologize for my absence. I realize that I am not able to participate in tonight's discussion, but I did want to share my thoughts regarding Return to Learn. First, I want to again thank our administration and LCS staff and stakeholders for their countless hours to research and develop several options to address our Return to Learn. But based on increasing numbers of COVID-19 cases in Lynchburg, the mayor's comments on Monday, and the concerns we have received from staff and parents, as was the case at our last meeting, I again cannot support what has been labeled Option 1. I am also concerned about the viability of Option 2, even with its delayed start to return to in-person learning. Therefore, based on the current CDC and LCS survey results, I would support a delayed in-person return to school. I would also prefer a plan that has a more defined operational model to allow both staff and parents to plan accordingly. Based on current projections of the virus impact, I would suggest that the plan be developed for implementation through the first 9-week grading period. In other words, if it is best to delay in-person instruction for middle and high school, I suggest that it be effective for the entirety of the first 9-week period. This gives parents the ability to plan and staff to develop a comprehensive instruction package. Regarding K through 5, they are my biggest concern regarding remote learning. I believe that in-person learning, as soon as it is safe, is necessary for these students. Therefore, I would support investigation into ways that we could do this safely if the data from the CDC and other pediatric care agencies support lower risk with in-person learning for grades K through 5. And as always, I support complete flexibility for parents to select remote learning at any time. I also support the flexibility with staff to allow them to work remotely until they deem safe to return. Clearly, this is a very complex and difficult decision to make, and the biggest obstacle is uncertainty of what the future may hold. I will trust that my colleagues working with the administration will make the best decision possible based on the available data at this time, and I will support that ultimate decision. Best wishes during your meeting. Respectfully, Gary Harvey. All right. I think Dr. Brennan has something he would like to share.
Is it appropriate to
It is.
comment now? So I just want to clarify a couple of things, which is that, as was stated in the press conference today by Dr. Gately, this is a community problem. This is no longer people going to Myrtle Beach and coming back and being infected. This is the fact that when they go interview people for contact patient, they say, I didn't leave Lynchburg. You know, I did the right thing, and they're still getting infected. It's community-wide, and their message was to treat everybody like they're infected. That's the whole point. And I think if we open schools, well, back a little bit, schools that have reopened successfully in Europe or other places, as Dr. Stinya said, were able to get their incidence low. Other countries like Israel opened it up when they didn't have it under control, and it blew up. They had 2,000 cases in the schools. They had to shut everything down again. So if you have a low incidence, you can't open the schools again. And the last comment is that, unfortunately, I'm not sure that the vaccine is going to be the godsend to this, because I think there's going to be a lot of discussion about who gets it, who wants it, all these things. But we can fix this problem. You know, we know it is true, and it's been done in other countries, that if you wear masks and you do social distancing, as everybody does it, if they say this is really for the common good, we're going to do this to get this fixed, that will take care of the problem. And I think waiting for the vaccine is going to be nice when it comes, but I don't think it's going to answer all the questions because it's going to take so long to have that process. Not necessarily the vaccine be available, but to see the effects of it and people to accept it. But we have a community-based problem. It's community transmission. It's not being brought in, and it can be affected by us doing the right thing. And if we open the schools now, I think we're going to be doing the wrong thing, and that the teachers and students may not get infected in the school, but they will bring it from the outside into the school, and other people will be infected. And it's just going to be a major problem. So I'm optimistic we can get it under control. I think there are guidelines what we do, which is when the numbers decrease for a 14-day period, then you've got things under control. When the percentage positive rate is less than 5%, you know you're back in business again. And I think we can reach those markers.
What I would like us to do, if the board would accept, and it is the pleasure of the board, is to remind us one more time that we will hear each opinion, but ultimately act as one. I think it is important that this board respect each opinion of every board member, as well as every person who took the time out to do an email, to come personally and talk with us, etc. And so what I would like to do as the chair at this time is that the chair would like to make a motion that we will, at this time, approve a return to learn option. And if I can get a second for that, the discussion and questions can take place, but I'm going to ask that our school board clerk would call the roll and ask each board member to identify which option they want to vote for. And then from that, we will determine a total with a simple majority ruling a passage. School Board Member Evans?
Just one quick question before.
Sure.
I understood where Susan was coming from with the sports, and I had my concerns about them. Where does that fit into this, in our decision-making? Where does that, or is it separate with them doing, that's what I'm just trying to figure out. Like if I vote for option 3, am I voting for?
Option 3, is to move back the start of in-person learning pretty much for all kids that's where we're narrowing our focus from. So instead of the pre-K to 5 coming in on August 24th and the 6th through 12th grade students coming in on September 8th, you're moving that start date back for in-person learning for all kids back to the end of the first 9 weeks. Everything else in the plan is going to stay the same unless, and I have to qualify that, unless there is a reason not to. So if we need to reach out to a certain population of students and say, this is what we need to do differently for them, we still want that flexibility to do those things as safely as we can.
That makes me feel better about just different populations in general too, not just sports, but everybody. Okay.
So, thank you, School Board Member Evans. So I would like to recommend that the school board select and approve a return to learn option. Is there a motion for that?
I move that we recommend the return to learn option.
That we're selecting one and we'll approve that tonight. Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Ms. Morrison. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, we're going to ask our board clerk to call the roll. Each person will identify which option you are voting for when it.
Wait, what's the motion?
The motion was a simple motion to call for a vote for each board member to articulate which option 1, option 2, or option 3 that they will vote for. She will call every board member's name and you will state what option you're voting for, and then we will total the results at the end.
I thought the motions are supposed to be specific.
It is specific.
I went by the
Either
recommended
motion 3,
action.
motion 2,
The school board
option
chair
2, option
recommended.
1.
The motion was clear, and I want to make it clear because Dr. Gupta's point is very important. This is calling for a vote in each board member, very similar to how it's done in other venues on this matter, VHSL, etc. She'll call the roll. This was a motion to call for a vote. It has been seconded, and that is how we're going to. Yes, ma'am.
I think there was a question regarding the wording of the motion. And
That the school board select and approve a
return to learn option. That's what I stated, and that's what's recommended.
Right. All right. Madam Clerk?
Which option is on the table?
Madam Clerk?
All of them. Yeah, you're choosing one.
School Board Member Evans, option 1, 2, or 3.
3.
School Board Member Morrison, option 1, 2, or 3.
3.
School Board Member Carter, option 1, 2, or
3.
3. School Board Member Brennan, option 1, 2, or 3.
3.
School Board Member Coleman, option 1, 2, or 3.
3.
School Board Member Nellis, option 1, 2, or 3.
3.
School Board Sinha, option 1, 2, or
3.
School Board Member Gupta, option 1, 2, or 3.
None of them are my choices, so.
Good. That's fine. Okay. So what do we have?
At this point, you have 7 members voted 3 for option 3, and 1 with no vote, and 1 is absent.
With simple majority, this option 3 is the will of the board, and we thank each of you as we now move forward as one. Thank you, school board members. At this time, we will now move to item H1, and we're very proud to be able to come to H1 at this point, which is coming before us for action tonight. And the school board chair recommends that we bring before us the following in accordance with section 22.1-76 of the Code of Virginia. It is necessary that the school board reorganize for the 2020-21 school year, and that this reorganization requires that the school board appoint a clerk for the term of 1 year, and the superintendent is recommending that appointment to be Tina P. Day. Is there a motion to that effect?
I will move.
Been moved by Dr. Sinha, seconded by Dr. Carter, that we will have now Tina Day as the clerk of our school board. Is there any discussion or question? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries. And we are thankful. Come on, let's be gratitude. Now, portion Tina Day as clerk. That moves us now to H2, which are our operation policy update. Dr. Edwards?
Yes, so this is under new business. For operations, the group met on July 9th to review several policies in operations and a couple with service animals. There is also the law enforcement policy, KNAJ, which is the relationships with law enforcement, not the MOU that is on here. Most of these policies are VSBA changes and updates in language. None of them are anything that requires us to put a Z after them because they weren't significantly modified by LCS. I will mention, and the board can decide, because this is just for new business and discussion at this point, that in November, our November work session is going to be on a revisit of SROs, the MOU. So we will have a lengthy discussion at that point, and I do believe it was the conversation about moving the KNAJ relations with law enforcement authorities back to either a November approval or a December approval after the discussion of SROs and the MOU has occurred. So even though it's on the agenda as a policy that was reviewed by the operations committee, just know that that discussion also ensued as a result of conversations that we've had.
Any further discussion on this matter? Dr. Brennan?
I did send out an email with some information, and people were not to review it. I think Ms. Morrison had a couple of questions that she had raised about some of the policies.
One question I had was why the 60-day delay for lockdowns for younger kids.
Why wait until we get the routines in place and not scare them and make sure that they understand the layout of the building and all of those things like that.
And I just have stated that I've worked with a preschool that did that and did it very well, and that sometimes these kids are most vulnerable in that they benefit well from structure. So it was just a concern that I have that if we're not giving them the training from the day, and it can be done safely and carefully and caringly by the teachers. I've seen it work, and that's just a concern that we're going for 2 months without kind of walking them through what would happen if there were something. And we do know that there have been incidents in elementary schools where that has happened.
Any other discussions? Thank you, Ms. Morrison, for your questions that you raised previous to the meeting. Dr. Nilles?
So the edit for that particular policy is an LCS edit?
Yeah.
That's what I'm understanding.
To which policy? The safety drills?
Drill.
I think that's I think these are all VSBA.
Yeah.
And I think,
those are VSBA.
yeah, and I don't know if Ms. Towns can help us with this, but I think this was either this idea of not having young children participate, whether that was at the state level, whether that was passed by state legislature.
At the state level and in the Virginia Fire Code, the school board always has discretion to do more, but that's the minimum that needs to be done. And so they carved out an exception for pre-K and kindergarten students for 60 days.
Dr. Sinha?
Just for clarification, does that mean that we are prohibited from having any kind of drill like that for the first 60
They're
days?
exempt, but I don't think you're prohibited from it.
Okay,
But
so
make
we
it
could
clear.
choose to do one
Right.
earlier. 60 days does seem like a long time.
Well, the way it's worded, it says they're exempt from mandatory participation. So even if you could still have one, but they could opt out, I guess.
I thought that you actually had to have one within 30 days or something at the beginning of school, so they're actually allowing the younger kids to opt out.
But that's within the first 60 days.
Yeah.
So even if you had one 20 days in, I guess you'd have to give parents an option to opt out. I mean, and you don't have to answer that now, just.
Any further discussion on this? Is coming for us for information tonight. Is it, Ms. Morrison?
The only other point was a question about service animals and the miniature horses. But I actually Googled it, and they really do use them a lot for mobility challenges, and that they are much more reliable sometimes than dogs. It was a very interesting thing, because I was one that said no way, but I did research it.
So, Dr. Brennan?
So Dr. Edwards, can I just clarify, are we going to pull the KNAJ for a later date discussion and then vote on these other policies next time?
Yes.
Is that agreeable to everyone?
Is it consent agenda material, Dr.
So just to be clear, the KNAJ one, these, again, I can't tell, there's red deletions and green underline. So those are all VSBA
Yes.
changes.
Yes.
And what if we did a change, what would it show up as?
We would try to make it blue, is what we were using before.
Okay.
So that we can,
Okay.
With the KNAG being pulled, are there other updates, consent agenda?
I would think so. Is that agreeable?
Okay. Always reserve the right to to pull it, but let's do that with every update other than KNAJ for H2. All right? Hearing no further discussion, we'll now move to H3, which is the finance policies and regulation updates. Dr. Edwards?
Okay, once again, the policy work group for finance and fiscal met on July 6th to review the policies you see before you. And I do believe that, again, most of these updates are VSBA updates on these policies as well.
Okay. Any questions for Dr. Edwards or Mr. Carnage or any of our finance committee folk? Okay, hearing none. Are these consent agenda items? All right, so noted. Thank you, Ms. Carnage and others for, all right. That moves us to item H4, which is our Special Education Advisory Committee with students with disabilities, we require that the Lynchburg City School Board appoint a special education advisory committee annually. This committee meets a minimum of 4 times per year. Members serve for 2-year terms. Dr. Edwards, anything on that?
Yep, so you have a list of committee members by school, some still to be announced or determined. Janine is also here if you have any questions. Remember, we have several advisory committees, and you will, over the course of the next couple meetings, get to approve the members of those advisory committees.
Okay, any questions for Janine, or any very important part of what we do? Thank those persons who are under consideration. All right, very good. None at this time. Thank you, Janine, and that will move us on to item I-1, which is the superintendent's comments.
Great, all right. And the hour is late, so I won't take too much of time. I think we had a nice lengthy discussion about a lot tonight. I will leave you with one little sweet treat. One of our staff members was recognized as a hometown hero. You could write in and say how the staff member affected your life, and one of our students wrote in and talked about our very own Ginger Paris, who is our violin instructor over 40 years, and this was I believe the bakery is Sweet Indulgence, is the bakery, which they surprised her at her home on Friday as being the winner of the Hometown Hero Award, and I just think that is an award well-deserved, and what a sweet treat for Ginger for all that she does with our strings program and her leadership there. So.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards. Board comments, we'll start with Bill Evans, if anyone has anything. Ms. Morrison?
The Lynchburg City School community lost a valuable friend to us and a long-term teacher and coach. Frances Simpson is a legend at EC Glass High School. She had more state championships than most coaches would ever have, and Simpson was just a force to be reckoned with, and you could see her leaning against a tree, and it's been fun to read the comments about Miss Coach Simpson, and she'll be missed. The second one is that a Heritage graduate by the name of Matt Nillis was in the newspaper for his Army service. We are grateful for what he did for our country, but for also starting a support group for veterans at Duke to help them through the process of getting back into the mainstream. And even though he's graduated successfully, that group still continues. And I would like to thank him and his proud parents.
Yeah, thank you.
Well said, Dr. Carter.
As a Heritage graduate, I was going to say that, but Susan stole my thunder, so I don't have anything else.
Dr.
I
Brennan?
have no comments.
I just want to thank each of you. We are all volunteers, and I hope the public recognizes that this board, for the last several meetings, we've had 3-4-hour meetings because we care and we're concerned, and the administration certainly is putting in untold number of hours because we want to get this right for our most precious resource, our children and youth. And so thank you, board members, for the excellence that you're bringing at such a critical hour as this. Dr. Nillis?
No comments.
Dr. Sinha?
I'm good.
Dr. Gupta?
No comments.
We want to thank Hope Towns, for our attorney, for being with us tonight, and for our school board clerk. That now moves us to item K1, informational items. And we need to know that our next school board work session will be held on August the 18th in the boardroom. And the next school board meeting beyond that would be September the 1st in the boardroom. And any other matters, we will certainly bring them to your attention. That moves us now to L1, notice of closed meeting. And pursuant to the Code of Virginia, Section 2.2-3711A1, the school board needs to convene a closed meeting for the purpose of discussing the following specific matter, the superintendent's evaluation. Is there a motion for us to move into a closed meeting?
I so move.
Been moved by Dr. Brennan,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Morrison. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries, and we'll take about 5 minutes to clear the room in the building. We'll remain here in the boardroom for our closed meeting.
Then we're staying here, probably going upstairs.
Thank you.